Welcome to the Independent Characters, episode 187. This is Carl.
This is Justin.
This is Jody.
And we're recording on brand new equipment.
Very strange new lands we've found ourselves in here.
Everybody's having to wear headsets.
Yeah, we're in outer space, and it's the future. Yeah. It's awesome.
But I think it's gonna help the quality a tremendous amount. I mean, based on what we just heard, what we recorded before, I think it sounds infinitely better. There's less interference. There's no middleman. None of that stuff. So yep. I think it's going to be a vast improvement. Okay, so this episode, we are talking about the champions of 40K, the Enigmas of the Xenos. This is the third round we've done of this kind of series, and we'll go back and visit it again as things progress. But we have a few introductory announcements before we get going. So as you know, we have Patreon going on. It's doing very well. I've actually kept over 300 people now. We're at like 302 as of this moment, which is incredible. So
very nice.
So for those people who are part of that, they get, several things. They get additional podcasts every month. At a certain level, you get access to the campaign that we're going to start running very soon, which is just laid out awesome. So
looking good.
Did I show you yet, Jody?
No, I haven't seen it.
Oh my God, I've got to show you.
Yeah.
It does look pretty cool.
Yeah.
I showed you pictures,
I'm
right?
very excited.
So very, very cool. So that's kind of like a worldwide campaign that'll run for 12 months, and then we'll figure out what to do after that. And then last is this episode is sponsored by our Patreon member, Liz Apke. So
Liz.
every episode, we pick a random person who's helping support the show, and she is our producer for this episode.
Hobby champion. She's a fantastic hobbyist, great painter.
Yeah, for sure.
Super nice.
For sure. So thank you so much, Liz. We really appreciate your participation. So let's move into Elite Choice before we take a break and then head off to the wonderful world of hobby progress. Jody, why don't you go first?
All right. So the best thing I saw the last couple of weeks on the Facebook group was Brian Berman. He hosted a local charity event out of his home for about 9 players and then, said it already, donated that money to a local charity. Carl, you've said so many times on the show that if you don't see an event in your area that's what you want, well, then run an event.
Right.
And I was so blown away and impressed that Brian not only did that, but then made it run, because he says he lives a couple hours from his nearest local game store. So he had to build something for himself. And then from the success of that, turned it into a means of helping others and kind of spreading the hobby love and getting people involved. I got a little excerpt because his post was pretty lengthy. He kind of told his story about how this came to be.
Right.
And I'm going to read just a quick part. So, Brian, if I butcher your voice here, sorry. Long story short, says Brian, I'm nothing special. I
swear to God, I thought you were going to do like kind of a nerdy voice there for a minute. Don't do it. Don't you do it.
Don't plant the seed, man.
Do it.
So Brian said, long story short, I'm nothing special. I'm lucky that in where we've recently moved in our first house in Maine, we have a full basement. It gives him room for indoor tables. And he's got just some basic setup. But he says he's encouraged anyone still reading, because it was a long post, to seriously consider hosting events as charity events. My players end up spending maybe $40 on food and donations for a long day of all they can eat and drink warhammering fun. And our local children's hospital gets a little more help. That's doing the hobby right.
Awesome.
Way to go, man.
Yeah,
Children's
cool.
Hospital, dude. You can't get more.
Yeah.
And what were you out for? Well, I played a game all day and helped
That's an
people.
easy one to get past the wife, too, or husband, right? You're just like, what? It's for charity.
I got to do it.
They're expecting me. Right?
Justin, how about you? What'd you pick?
It's even better when I'm the last one laughing.
Do you want?
That's pretty much the slogan of my life. And Mr. Bernard Warias, he had a really beautiful post with a Harlequin troupe that was really well done. And it just popped out in my mind because they had great use of contrast and color, really amazing freehand on it, and in colors that you don't traditionally see Harlequins painted in.
Yeah.
It had a really nice big storyline behind why he chose these colors and how they're going to get incorporated into his army, and how this troupe was used or painted for a friend who's in the hospital, I guess, who when he comes and plays,
right.
He'll have it ready for him. So just kind of cool on all fronts that he's painting this for a friend, and really well done Harlequin troupe.
Yeah,
It's hard to do.
This absolutely caught my eye because exactly as you said, not only are Harlequins can be, it's kind of like all of the options at the cereal aisle. It's just too many good choices because you can paint anything. So like, how do you narrow it down?
They are the Fruity Pebbles of armies, right?
Truly. That worked really well, man. That was a lot. That was a multi-tier joke. My brain locked up on it. But also, like the Dia de los Muertos face paint effect is can come off so garish on miniatures. Like it just doesn't read. And he nailed it. It looks so good.
Yeah, he did it subtly, and he had like the rose free hands. And just really well done. Yeah, great paint work.
Well, for me, I chose David Moss sharing his awesome pictures from the Tokyo Tactical event, which just had great terrain. It looked like great models. It looked like a great time. I mean, it was a large group of people. I think it was the largest 40K event they've run in Tokyo, which is really cool. And I mean, when we started the show, when Jeff and I started the show, I never really gave any consideration to like the international implications of it, that the internet really has no boundaries or borders. And, you know, so as we started looking at data and we're like, oh, look, there's people in like South Africa listening to the show and people in, you know, Kyrgyzstan, or, you know, I mean, like you see downloads from all these locations and you're like, oh, that's very interesting. And then you know, when you hear about this, I think I put some guys in Tokyo in touch with Steve Parker at one point, who's out there for an event. He went there and guested an event. He's a Black Library author, for those who don't know. And, you know, it's just cool that the reach is that far and that people from those areas are sharing what they're doing. It blows my mind every time. And that looked like a cool event.
It did. Yeah. Everything looked great. The tables, the models, the armies, everybody had a great time. It looked like just win.
One of the emphasis points was just as you said, was like reaching out and expanding and reaching a broader audience. It seemed like that was a big push of the event, of like, you know, kind of putting Tokyo on the map, which is a strange sentence. How's that for a pointless sentence?
And I think he mentioned he was going to be expanding too and adding more tables and making it bigger for next time. So
yeah, very cool.
So that was mine. So you guys got anything you want to add before we take a break, come back, and then launch into hobby progress?
Devour and purge. I'm ready for it.
All right.
Kill, maim, burn. Let's do this.
All right. We'll be right back. Wargamma.com, where you can get resin terrain, craters, lakes, lava pools, and objectives. Figure bases for all types of models. Character models including Battle Wolf war mounts and spawn seeds. Linked barricades. Choose from one of 6 designs to suit the origins of your army. From Star Pharaoh, Spawn Hive, Mechanoid, Dark Ancients, Dradelian Noble, and Chromag Scrapyard. Linked barricade sets include 12 large shields, which are 2 inches wide and 4 connecting walls. Cover nearly a 30-inch line. Sets also include a matching multi-gun turret. Wargamma.com. Alternative battle miniatures. All right, and we're back, and we're going to kick it off with a little bit of hobby progress. You know what? I'm going to go first. Let me just get this out of the way. I have not really accomplished a damn thing in the last month, to be perfectly honest. Now,
do tell.
Well, I bought this Rodecaster Pro thing. I bought the sound equipment. You know, this is all part of the hobby for me, right?
Yep.
I bought this. I got it all working. It's phenomenal. I'm super excited about it. This is the first show recorded on the new equipment, so hopefully everybody's enjoying that. You know, I've done a lot of cleaning and preparation for a game day coming up tomorrow. I still have a little bit to do. And then I sent my Necromunda Goliath gang off to Big Ed, Robo Ed, who's gonna paint it from Life After the Cover Save. So
You're still doing that commission painting thing?
Commissioned that with him.
There you go.
Sure, why not?
Yeah. So there's only so many hours in the day.
Yeah. Well, and speaking of that, here's my problem. I'm oversubscribed, like big time. I'm writing that story for the Titan giveaway. That's taking up a bunch of time. I'm planning Geekend for everybody here. That's taking a bunch of time.
Yeah.
Go ahead, keep rubbing your fingers. I'm running the podcast. I'm running the Patreon. I have family stuff. You know, there's only so much time in the day, as you just said.
I feel your pain.
And sometimes something's got to give. And right now, for me, it's been the lack of time to set aside and do hobby stuff. So.
I'm excited that you're excited about Necromunda, because I haven't played that since I had hair. So...
Yeah, I am excited about it. Austin's the one talking about running a Necromunda thing.
Alrighty.
So. And the great thing is, you know, I don't have to run that.
Sure. I've said that from jump, even when we did the past episode. I was like, hey, if somebody else wants to run it, sure.
Yeah.
Nope.
Like I said, I got the Patreon, the campaign I've been designing. I mean,
it's good to be realistic like that, because otherwise it just all crumbles and fails. Nothing's done
right
the way you want it to be
now.
done. Yeah.
Now the reality is things are like dominoes are starting to fall now. So like things are,
Cleaning the plate.
yeah, things are getting cleaned up. So I can see the light at the end of the tunnel in many of these cases. I just got to get these last things out of the way, and then I can kind of go back to working on stuff for me. Right. But,
Yes, it's a strange like balancing act of a lack of progress is so damaging to progress, whereas like a little bit of finishing things is so motivating.
Yeah.
It's this real, razor's
finishing
edge.
things like keeps you motivated.
Yep.
Yeah,
But when they backlog, it's just as damning as it is helpful to finish things. So like it goes both ways. Yeah.
So that's me. I haven't even played a game, as we'll get into yet. So it's just been too swamped. Justin, let's move on to you.
I got a little more progress done than you, but not a whole lot more. As I did get back from Hawaii, had a great vacation with my family, and
was this your first time in Hawaii?
My tan? Is it okay? A little bit tan. No. It was no. I turn yogurt. I don't tan. It's either white or yogurt. It was great time, but obviously not a whole lot of hobby progress.
Right.
A lot of Game of Thrones watching in the hotel room on an iPad, and that was my nerdy hobby progress.
How was but you enjoyed it?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Kauai.
I knew you'd like it.
Yeah, well overdue.
Yeah.
Well, good for you guys. I'm really glad you got to go out and do that.
Yeah, we'll be back for sure.
You did do some stuff though.
I did do some stuff. So I was back for literally a night, and then the next day I went and picked up the great Sam Lenz from the airport to attend the CK large demon painting class, and it was a lot of fun.
Yeah,
it was a lot of fun getting inside of. It's always fun to paint with other people, especially guys as talented as Sam, and get in their heads and see what makes them tick. And Kat and I attended as students, which was nice. We weren't actually, the ones behind the curtain, but we were in the audience, so to speak. And I learned a lot. There was a lot of points where I was like, dude, I just want to get my airbrush out, because it was a mostly brush painting class.
Oh, really?
So all that skin was all wet blended with like a large number 6 brush.
I didn't realize that. I thought you would use your airbrush.
So I did. I did. However, I made sure to follow exactly what he was doing, right?
Right.
So I made sure, okay, he's going over wet blending. I'm going to do that on all the skin, and then I'll get my airbrush out and do the purples on the crab claws or the chitinous armor plates or whatnot.
Right. Chitinous.
Chitinous.
Yes.
It's not chitinous.
No. It's spelled like that, but it's pronounced chitin.
Us Yanks, what do we know?
Yeah.
Well,
but
just educating people.
That's it. Hey, if we could help each other.
Tell me if I'm using something wrong.
Yeah, I did appreciate that post too. That were the icy drinking game.
Oh my god.
Yeah, that was the honorable mention elite choice. I was thus far I've dodged that bullet, but I know
we'll put that out. I know it's holidays.
Yeah, I don't want to know. Too many.
I
There's
want
too
to be
many.
responsible for anybody's liver other than my own.
Oh yeah, I don't care about that as much as like seeing my own failings as a speaker.
You heard it here. Justin doesn't care about your livers.
I really don't. I don't care about mine. I don't care about yours. Anyhow, back to Slanesh. So yeah, the model was great. I did make sure, like, okay, we're going over glowing eyes. I made sure to follow every step of the way for him to teach glowing eyes. Learned all kinds of cool techniques I'd never tried before, such as taking, he was looking at the crab claws on this thing and said, what could be cool? Because I had like a purple to black fade on the tips.
Yeah.
He's like, you take a little bit of ink, Daler Rowney ink, and you do little pools of it, right? Let it dry for a little bit. Take a brush, dry brush, and you sop up the middle of where the pigment is kind of built up.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And it leaves like a very organic line, subtle line around it, and the middle gets less opaque. So it almost gives a very natural kind of a crustacean, like, it's hard to explain over radio.
I'll have to see that.
Think would you imagine this technique would work well for, say, age spots? Like if you're doing a larger scale figure and you want to do age spots on somebody's skin. I've seen people do something similar, not with ink, but just with acrylic, and you do a drip, let it sit for a second, dab it up,
and then
get that.
soap up the middle.
Yep.
And it leaves a really, almost like a coffee stain.
Yeah. Intentional.
An intentional coffee stain.
Yep.
Yeah. So really fun stuff like that. But yeah, I got to admit, I was like, dude, I want to get the airbrush out to do this and that and this. But hey, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. And the class was like, they had a great time with it. Great looking models.
It was not everybody was doing the same model in this class, right? Everybody was doing about a monstrous model.
There was 4 sculpts to choose from.
Oh, okay.
And
were these all the demon
creature caster?
Creature caster.
They were all creature caster. Yeah. There was.
What did Kat work on?
She worked on her. So Kat and I were both naughty. We we both did 2 models that were not from the actual class.
Oh, okay.
But we both approved it through Sam.
But I thought yours is a creature caster one, right?
It's creature
but it's
caster.
not one of the 4.
It's not one of the 4 that
Okay.
he recommended for the syllabus for the class. But she worked on the really big Great Unclean one from Creature Caster.
Cool. Nice.
Okay.
That has a big mace.
Yeah.
You know, and she worked on blending a lot of parts of that. But a lot of fun, and man, just I love the voyage that I'm on right now. Just learning from all these masters of the art. You know, it's fun.
Yeah,
Very
you're
cool.
a sponge right now, man. It's like every time I see you, like, hey, what about this? Hey, what? It's
crazy.
awesome.
It is
really
crazy,
for
though.
this sounds. I don't mean this to sound pretentious in any way, but it's super good for me because I got away from doing that a little bit per that infamous conversation you and I had.
Sure, I knew that would leave a mark, much like Fruity Pebbles.
Indeed, it did. So for those who don't know, Justin and I had a long talk while playing a game, sort of. I mean, he was playing and I was dying. So, but we had a
Not
long,
true.
very enjoyable talk about like pushing yourself in painting versus like being at a particular level.
Right.
And there was a long time in which I was really, really pushing myself and have backed way off of that. And we were kind of talking about the pros and cons of it. So hearing you like exploring all these techniques, a lot of which didn't exist when I was kind of going on that journey that you're on, you know, it's really cool because it kind of gets me re-excited to like try some new things. And,
I knew that conversation would have a little bit of pull.
it does.
on
I have
Pez.
no desire to go back to the old competition painting. So wet blending though is for a lot of people is a terrifying technique. And you said the body looks phenomenal. The photos, it looked so smooth and clean, and that's the benefit of wet blending. Do you have like hey, anybody who's thinking to try it, here's a couple tips that you'd say takeaways? Because it's a well-known technique that a lot of people are really intimidated by.
Yes. Don't go crazy like I did and do 3 colors. Do 2. Like start with 2. Because I was blending like a Thrall flesh, a lot of P3 paints. I was blending like a flesh color, a dark red color, and blues in kind of at the same time. Start with 2 colors. I would also say start on like a piece of plasticard, which is something that Sam actually had us do in the class. So instead of going to the model first and let me see how this works out, you basically take a piece of plasticard and then maybe zenithal it a little bit, kind of get some different gradients in it, like you would on the model, right? And then just practice with 2 colors of slopping down 1 color, clean your brush, slop down another color, and the real key is using the side of the brush, using the meat of the brush. You're not blending it with the very tip, like you're right angled at the palette doing this. You're using the belly of the brush to blend these colors as seamlessly together. One of the things that Sam does a lot is he doesn't really use a lot of mixing medium, and he works with really tacky, really viscous paint, which that was for me like, okay, I guess I'll try that because I'm used to really working with all kinds of mediums, thinners, extenders, you know, and so that took some getting used to.
People have different, I mean, just like anything, you know, people have different approaches to, I like paints when they're a little thicker. I like paints when they're a little thinner. I mean, that's just a personal, I think that's just a personal choice. I mean, clearly you can get some different effects, you know, using different techniques with that. But I think for the most part, that's kind of a personal choice. I used to like paints that didn't go on as smooth. Like I used to like thicker paints, and then I've kind of evolved into liking thinner stuff.
Right. I think it depends on the effect you're going for. I think it depends on ultimately how many coats you're looking to do.
Right.
Because, you know, the more coats you get, the more paint that's going to build up. You're not working with an airbrush. You're working with actual paint. So you can run that risk of tearing paint, getting that chunky look. So I would really recommend people just sit there one day for a couple hours and practice on a palette or a piece of plasticard instead of going to the model until you get that kind of brush control, that muscle memory down, if you will.
Yeah. That thing about the tip of the brush, that's a huge point, just because, I mean, and it makes sense when you think about it, because you're trying to gradient, you're not trying to draw lines, and the tip of the brush is going to draw drag, you know, create drag marks, and you don't want that. So
Exactly. Yeah.
That's really cool, man. I can't wait to see that model.
yeah. I'm sorry I didn't bring it. I'll make sure to post some better pictures too. I was kind of haggard when I got back and took some real basic ones, but I need to put it on a bigger base because I think I have it on a 50 mil. I think my original intention was to use it as a Demon Prince, and this thing is way too big. Yeah, so I need to put it on the big oval.
Yeah. What do you think of that new Keeper of Secrets?
Oh, stop it.
It's
I'm
okay.
sorry, I
It's
jumped in.
okay. It's okay. No, it's amazing. Yeah,
I love
for
that
sure.
character that it can be also. I don't even remember the name, but with the one with the shield and the
Yeah, I would have liked to see a
shield.
little more movement in it personally, but it does have that cool kind of. It dawns on me as the type of pose where all of its lackeys are charging into combat, and then all of a sudden in the horror movie, it kind of springs up from behind, and it's just kind of slowly walking towards you, like, yeah, you're dead. There's nothing you can do against me.
Yeah.
But I love it.
It's so good.
So well done. Not a fan of the hair of the special character one, kind of flipping with the spear, and the shield.
Yeah.
But
It's a great model. I wish there was one more face option.
Okay. Wait, for the big one?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I just wish, the Bloodthirster has multiple head options. The Lord of Change does.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure
Lord of Change has the Karos and then the other one, right?
there's like 4 different faces you can put on it.
Right. That's right.
Yeah, I wish there was just another face option is my only critique, but I think it's great. I think it has that like dark confidence almost to it as opposed as
for sure.
Again, as I always go to, it's a really strong silhouette to it.
Right. Yeah. I think that's anyway.
For the most part,
I was at the store and I was looking at the pictures there and I thought, oh man, because once I saw it in person, I was like, this thing is pretty badass.
it's big.
Yeah.
Real
But it is
big.
just really cool. And seeing it in person as opposed to just pictures of it made a huge difference to me too.
I'll buy it for sure, but there's just too much stuff in the log.
Yeah.
I'm trying to be good.
All right, Jody, what have you been working on?
Luckily, I haven't been on in a little bit, so I got some time to get through some things. But the commitment to being non-committal continues. Helter Skelter is my hobby progress. So finished up a Black Templars Terminator squad, as well as the OG Gene Stealers from first edition Space Hulk. Got them up and set up.
What got you doing a Terminator squad of all things? You are not a Space Marine kind of guy.
Adepticon, man. It was that game.
It was.
I've sat on a first edition copy of Space Hulk, Gene Stealer, and Hybrid forever.
Yeah.
And I just forgotten how fun it is. And then my buddy Matt, who I play board games, and as you'll hear in just a moment, 40K with now, was gung-ho about it and had been kind of chirping at me. And I wasn't going to use the first edition Bean Pod Terminators from back in the day.
Right.
Yeah, they have not aged well.
No, they weren't good then, and they're worse now. Yeah, so I was just kind of hopped online and found a really reasonably priced Terminator squad, and Five Guys is Five Guys painted black and it's catching some edge highlights isn't too tough. Yeah. And so it was just fun to turn and burn on those guys and get that set up so I could actually play the thing.
Now I know that for Space Hulk, the new edition, they have some PDFs you can download. I think through the iTunes store. I don't know elsewhere, but for example, they have like an Ultramarine squad that you can download. They have different rules.
Oh, sweet.
Yeah, so I don't know. I think they have a Dark Angels and an Ultramarines. I don't know that they have a Black Templar one. But
I'll have to. They definitely have the new, air quotes, new updated rules when the Gene Stealer cult stuff came out.
Oh yeah,
they
that's
produced rules for the Magos
yeah.
and neophytes and hybrids,
cool.
and so you could go back to playing with all the various things. So
We may need to talk about this because I've been putting off painting Gene Stealer cult models for too long. So
yeah,
this
well,
could
and
be
then
dangerous.
I was asking, and Carl was like, "Well, I got all these guys, and I'm not using them. Here you go."
I wasn't going to.
So yeah, the pure strains from the OG box still work, and then I'll be slowly adding those guys in.
Nice.
So got all the toy options.
Honestly, you should have hit me up about Terminators too. 'Cause I have
Well,
so many.
I only have 5, and I do need more.
Well,
Yeah. So.
don't before you leave tonight. Let me know because I've got some that I can toss your way.
Alrighty then. Sweet.
A Space Hulk day could be really cool.
Oh, Matt and I have
And
games
also
played. I'll talk about it.
Also with Elites coming out, Kill Team Elites coming out. You haven't even played Kill Team yet.
I've played once.
Oh, did you? Okay, well,
my head almost popped.
Kill Team Elites is coming out, and you're going to be able to use Terminators. I think in Kill Team Elites.
Yeah, and so I need
At least one.
I need an Ultramarine Terminator to go with my Ultramarine kill team.
There you go.
Yeah, it's speaking of Creature Caster just a moment ago, when I was at Adepticon, I picked up their line of Pro Acryl paints.
Oh, they're so good.
Yeah, they are.
I got to use them for the first time. They're so good.
Their red puts what's it called? Bold Pyral Red. Their names are literally like just artist color. They don't have like boogers and milk names. It's just like what's this? Mahogany. What's it called?
Boogers and milk. It must be Friday.
Oh, so very. So I painted up some Chaos Cultists and started painting on the Red Corsair Chaos Space Marine kill team I want to do. Man, and I got to put the Pro Acryl paints through their paces there. Very, very matte finish, really intense, high pigmentation. They are a thinner paint, so in the thicker, thinner world. Who were we just talking about? Justin and I
I was just going to say, I find it so funny that you love these, but you don't like P3 because they feel very P3 to me. P3?
P3E. Yeah, I don't. I am not
P3-ish.
P3 like.
They feel very chitness to me.
Yeah. Anyway, man, the filter is just barely holding for me in my mouth tonight.
Let it go, man.
So there, it's the satin finish on the P3 paints that throws me off. And these are matte. I'm a Reaper guy. Like I've used Reaper Master Series paints for a long time, and they are also, really almost gritty matte. And I love that. So I get a matte finish, but that kind of pigmentation and smoothness. They've got their little sriracha tops, which is kind of interesting. They have a rotating.
The thing about those though is that if you travel with them, they are known to explode
because of the pressure.
Because of the pressure. So it's something that Craze is working on with them, but apparently just food for thought. Cat's had a bunch of them explode in her bag. So traveling painters, beware.
Okay.
Put them in bags.
But it is a cool design. I agree. Because it's just, you twist it off. It doesn't come all the way off. You get your dabs out and then you close it back up.
And make sure you wipe the tip.
Always keep it. Yes.
Yep.
Enough. Move on. Move forward.
No, because it clogs.
Right. Okay. I understand.
All right. So then the last thing I did, which will probably sound as, if you've been following my hobby progress at all lately, this is a little out of left field. Sisters of Battle Seraphim Squad and a Hospitaller got done.
Yeah, you did.
Was really happy with the results, and it was super fun to go back to that really old project now. And let me see.
No interest in waiting on new sisters, huh?
No, so thanks for the segue. This army will never get expanded past a certain point.
Okay.
Because
somebody
he's
online taking the Adon stance.
Never say never.
No, right? No, and here's why. When I explain why, there is that's it then. A very dear friend of mine was a Sisters player and passed away.
I remember
I inherited all of her models.
Right.
And then I had castings made of all of her stuff in resin. So I still have her army, but I have this army that I painted as like a homage of her models. And some of it is like my own twist on things and my own spin. And some of it's metal, like some of the stuff she hadn't finished that was in box, I took it and finished it. And then Loopy hooked me up with some odds and ends that were missing. So it will always be that era of army. So
that makes a ton of sense.
Yeah. So once it's done, it's done. And somebody online commented, they're like, holy cow, you converted on metal. And I'm like, no. Like, full disclosure, that was resin, and it made my life a whole lot easier.
Yeah, because you added like wing bits, right?
Yeah, so those I think they are the biker back banner bits for Ravenwing bikers. They have like the wing crest. And way back in the eBay days when you could get any bit you wanted on eBay through various vendors, which I was a little surprised at recently, that's really... I don't know if GW shut it down or just people. I mean, I used to always think like, what a nightmare to have to catalog all that. And
I think that's what it boils down to. And, you wind up with bits like, hey, this rotor cannon sold out,
Right. But then you have 75 bajillion Havoc bodies with the demand for
one of our first
Games Workshop never did plastic bits. They always did metal bits service. Yeah.
But one of our first advertisers on this show was a bits store that, again, I mean, we went from a point of, we will only advertise products we would use. Like that was the stance we took. I won't advertise something I won't use. And we had this bit store on, and every time I tried to go buy something from, sold out of this, sold out of that. I mean, even some common stuff. And then finally,
so you literally could not use that service.
I couldn't. Yeah. And so I canceled, the contract with it. Was nope, we're done.
Yeah.
He was not a happy camper about that, but I'm like, I don't know what to tell you, dude. I can't buy anything from you.
Yeah.
Just recently, I did get the wings, some Crypt Horror wings. Horda Bits has been around forever, and they're still kicking. They're still around. They had what I needed, got it to me. I think they're UK based now, though, so that was a little bit of a hiccup. Or I don't know, there was something a little different about it, but still got me what I needed. But I got these way back in those days. So yeah, just added some wings because my painting inspiration for that army was the old 4th, 5th ed Witch Hunter Codex that has the Inquisitor striding forward and then sisters around him.
Yeah.
And the one Seraphim that's up in the background has gold armor and proper wings, but then like these flowing kind of ribbons that would be the end of the jetpack. So
Right.
They look great, man.
So,
I
yeah.
really like the base work you did too.
thanks. That's how that army's set up. That's the good old Dark Age resin bases, cool cappers. So yeah, it was really kind of all over the place, and but got some stuff done, which was rad.
Nice. All right. Well, for hobby goals and promises, again, I'm still trying to. I was so excited about all this Black Legion stuff, and I've just stalled out. And it's not through lack of wanting to do it. I'm just.
But that's good. You know, stuff happens in life, but you still have that fire to get it
Oh
done.
yeah,
And it's going to happen.
Yeah,
Stuff gets delayed.
And this is the army I'm gonna paint. And I've been, I've been hitting up different people for their recipes for black, and then
Thank you by darkness.
I think it was Brian who kind of convinced me to go with like the blue shading,
Like a tealish,
to
more of
make
a
the
teal,
black-
dark teal.
kind of like, no, I mean black, but then with shading of blues, like when they do, I don't know if you know, but whenever they draw like Superman's hair, he has black hair. They always use blue in it to show where like the light is hitting it.
Just food for thought. If you want to make your blacks look extremely insanely black, you add a little red to the shadows, a little crimson red.
Okay.
And it's weird how it tricks your eye into like when I did, I think it was just a generic homunculi model. He's got the black folds of fabric, and you water down some really crimson dark red and then kind of glaze that into the shadows.
Yeah.
It like tricks your mind into making the blacks look blacker.
Well,
It's the
then I saw
weirdest thing.
somebody had posted a Terminator that they were doing, and they did these shades of blue and even some browns on it that made it look really, really cool.
Black can be tricky though. You want to be careful not to make it look too
right.
Yeah,
That's where I am kind of. So I was actually wondering if I'm wondering how the Dalarani like blue inks will go over the black.
Absolutely.
So I'm kind of thinking that might be the way to go.
Another
Kind of cheat it in a way. Like those inks are
cheating.
like
No.
those inks feel like cheating. They're so good,
it just gives you more control, right tool for the job.
Yeah, no, I agree.
coming from the guy that uses Sharpies.
Well,
you're doing just fine.
You're talking to two people that use Sharpies, so the heck with you.
Point them out on the Seraphim. That's all I'm asking. Show me where I used them.
There you go.
So
He just got done complimenting them.
so
Oh, you fell right into our trap.
Mr. Kiefer.
It must be the Sharpie fumes.
Hey, added benefit. Am I right? Yeah. Just to add
And
another.
they taste like grape.
No, kids. They
No.
don't taste like grape.
They don't.
They smell terrible, and they will kill you.
yeah, we go too far.
Public disclaimer, everyone.
Anyway,
for being responsible, Justin. Jeez.
yeah, when Justin's
I
the
try.
responsible one, we got a
We're
problem.
doomed.
That's it.
All right. Anyway,
So I was going to say to throw just more variables into your consideration. Another thing to think about is what colors you're going to be adding into your gold.
Yeah.
Because with black, as Justin said, you could shade the shadows. There's a good one.
You can.
You can
Glaze
shade
the
shadows
yeah.
anytime you
Right.
want. Shade shadow. You can glaze the shadows with red, which is a warm tone, or as you're talking about, blue. If you want things to pop, then you want to do the either warm or cool opposite into the gold. So
Okay.
you can shade golds with purples,
Yeah.
or with reddy browns. So if you go shade the black with red, like Justin's saying, then you'd want to go more purple with the gold to get a contrast.
So for the black edging, or excuse me, the gold edging, then would you recommend like purple washes over that? Or?
I either use purples or it depends.
But as
so
a
that's
wash.
literally how my brain cooks through it. Is I'm like, well, what washes or glazes am I going to use to set my shadows on my gold? Depends on what the surrounding colors are.
It's good advice.
God, my brain hurts.
Yeah, color theory's a big rabbit hole.
Well, I'm gonna use you guys for the.
But I think whichever
Just
way,
tell me what to do.
whichever
I need
way
to
you
paint
go,
my numbers.
by playing with the gold, like Jody says,
Yeah.
it'll look a million times better than just painting it gold.
I agree.
And, shooting a little bit of interest in there, whether it's purples or umbers or
Yeah.
anything, or glazing in with a brush, like it really makes the golds pop.
Okay.
Big time.
Okay. Well, I got to do all the gold honestly with a brush. Like I can't imagine.
Yeah, with a brush, but you could go in and either brush on the different colors, or you could go in and like shoot shadows. You're comfortable with getting in there close and
especially
shooting
with the
little
Sotar. Like that thing is so fine.
with a Sotar. Yep.
Yeah.
Or a Evo with a 0.4.
Well, I don't have one. Why don't you hook a brother up, CK? Anyway, but no, eventually I am going to buy one. I'm kind of waiting for CK to release their thing. Which,
it's getting delayed quite a bit.
I know.
Yeah.
So maybe I'm just going to have to pull the trigger.
But think about too, your larger, because you're going to have a larger gold trim too, where on the vehicles, the defilers, the mutilators, all those things. So and you could do some experiments too on random models. But
piece of plastic card and work on some gradients.
That's it.
I got tons of old models to practice with.
There you go.
I'm good.
But it just shows that you can have so much fun, even with a color scheme as quote unquote basic as black and gold. There's so many different colors that you can incorporate in there.
Well, like I said, when I looked at this Terminator, I was just blown away by the levels of colors and gradation in it. I just thought, wow, that is really, really nice looking.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So anyway,
good stuff.
So that's me, Justin.
On the road again. So I have I have 2 classes coming up. So a lot of my progress.
Talk about oversubscribed.
Yeah. I've just been buying last minute things for my courses. I just got my overhead camera arrived today, and
nice.
Got myself a nice Oakley backpack for my travels, and yada, yada, yada. So just for a lot of my progress is literally just CK Studios, and then also just chipping away where I can at that Warlord Titan. My next, I'll definitely, by the time we next record, I'll have the 3 crew painted done.
Wow. Nice. All right.
Done.
All right. Very cool.
I'm doing that apparently. And
I got to find out when my deadline for this book is, because anyway.
Yeah, we'll talk off air about that.
Oh, God. All right, Jody, how about you?
Deeply committed to staying totally non-committal.
Yes.
Which I realize is a total cop-out. So I think I would like...
It sounds like you're in a relationship that you kind of really don't want to be in, but like the girl's like, I'd like to get married, and you're like, yeah, baby.
Maybe one of the girls is, but I see it as like, this is my early 20s where I'm being very direct with, I am dating lots of people, and you have to be comfortable with that. So I'm telling all my models.
He's in 40K swinger
He's dating
status.
models.
Yeah. Wow, that worked out.
His story.
He's in an open relationship with 40K.
It's my escapism.
He's in an open relationship with 40K models.
That's... Nailed it. So this week I might go with some little spiky, chaosy fellas to get a little flavor of the week. The kill team, I'd love to get that Heretic Astartes kill team up and running, a little Red Corsair. Nice. I know summer is not quite here for Teacher Summer, but it's whispering. So the terrain, the demon table.
Yeah,
I did purchase the persistent spells for Khorne, the bleeding skulls,
just to use as scenery.
Yeah, no, I'm gonna make a hill where they're crying blood down into a chasm down the front, so it'll be like a waterfall of blood off of the 2 skulls.
So emo.
Nice,
thank
so
you.
Emo.
And then I picked up one of the giant spiky, not a Stargates.
That thing is so cool.
Noctilith
crown.
Gonna poke your eye out, Lith.
Noctilith crown.
Yeah, that one. It's going to go on top of a huge hill.
It's big.
Yeah. No, and I'm going to stick it on top of a hill because all of my terrain needs to be greater demon blocking sized.
So, and you're actually going to glue that down? Or
Oh, yeah. Commit. Into it.
Fully committed.
I'm all in
his non-committal relationship.
All right.
Yeah. So, and then some sisters doodads are getting done for sure. There's a multiple penitent engines just waiting to get multiplied.
Nice. All right, games played. Again, I haven't done anything, but tomorrow is Adon's see you later Adon party. He insisted I don't call it a goodbye party because he's going to be coming back. I keep talking about Adon being able to fly free. Somebody asked me why. It's because his wife works for Southwest Airlines, so he gets a deal. And for him to get here is actually not that complicated. So Adon is not leaving the show. He probably won't be on as often as he has been, but he will be back playing and that kind of stuff. So, we'll just set up weekends for him to come out and hang out, and we'll record during that time.
Sounds awesome.
But so now he's not going to have a replacement. There won't be a replacement of Don.
Oh, the universe will make it happen.
Yeah. Prepare for new person.
I predict Austin's friend Ian moving to the area.
He'll ride out on a white stallion.
We just need to get his wife to get a horse, and he's like, I'm out. And then he just moves over here.
Yeah, I think Austin told me to give him a hard time when I go out to Minnesota.
Oh,
he's actually in the class.
He's a wonderful guy.
Cool. Look forward to it. He sounds like it. He's going to be picking me up from the airport and taking good care of me.
You met him. I think you did meet him.
Oh, did I?
When you were at Adepticon, I was playing against him when I met Austin.
Okay.
So you have met him.
Adepticon was a little blurry.
Yeah. Trust me, you've met him.
Okay.
When you when you see them again, it'll
Yeah, I'm
probably
sure.
click.
Yeah, faces are they're cemented in.
So nothing for me. But tomorrow, as I said, we are playing a bunch of Kill Team and a bunch of 40K here, and yeah. So
I got 2 games lined up. I'm super
Nice.
kid free.
Oh, nice.
What time are you getting here, Mignana?
Probably like around 11ish.
Oh,
You know,
All
it
day,
starts
I
at
guess.
10.
Yeah, I've been horrible with the gym, so that's coming first, and then
All right.
all right. So you're locked in for the day.
gym
Sweet.
gym tan 40K. You know,
So what are you going to be doing, Justin? Hobby wise?
hobby wise, I think
We already did that.
We already
We
covered
were
that.
games played.
Oh, right.
Wallowing in my students' hobby progress. That's what I'll be doing. You're doing a great job. I wish I could be painting.
But games played.
Games played. I do not have.
Oh, did I skip him in the hobby?
No, you
No,
didn't,
I
but
just
I'm confused.
You okay? I'm following along in our notes.
Let's just blame the new equipment. That's what it is. No games
It's
played.
too awesome.
No games played, but I will say Games Workshop, fantastic job on the latest FAQ. I think they did a phenomenal job fixing some glaring issues.
It's funny that there was a slip of the tongue during one of the live broadcasts by Games Workshop.
saw that.
And he said 9th edition, blah, blah, blah. And he meant 8th edition. I slipped it. I'm sure they're working on 9th, which is probably why he had a slip of the tongue. But the reality is, like, a lot of people are like, oh my God, 9th. I'm kind of looking forward to 9th because it'll be like, it's going to be 8th with adjustments that everybody's been asking for. So I think it'll wind up being a pretty good.
I think so.
I look at the FAQs and I think you
I
can
think
see what's coming.
Incorporate the FAQs in there. They're doing trial rules. I think you're just going to see all of that. I think you're going to see some of the stuff from Cities of Death get worked in there, like the cover stuff, and then they'll just be like, boom, all in one book.
All in one book.
Yeah.
Yep.
Of the various egregious sins that were covered this go round, any one of them like really speak to your heart as like, I'm so glad this is fixed, or was it just the general cleanup?
There was a lot. I think they did a decent job of cleaning up flyers blocking movement to ground troops.
Yeah, I like that.
I mean, what can you do, right? At a certain point, they're on the
You
table.
can't just stack your models on top of people's bases, right?
Right.
That was good. I loved seeing like come on guys, really, the people that are taking like 9 demon princes and stuff, like to bypass the rule of 3 from certain keywords.
Yeah.
Like, come on. Or like the Imperial or cult players that are taking, 28 mortar teams because they can take Brood Brothers and Imperial Guard keywords.
Right.
Again, all this keyword shenanigans. And honestly, one of the big things was, as an Eldar player, we took a hit, because a lot of my lists I was building for competitively, like all Eldar players, was you take your compulsory Farseer and Warlock, you take your Doom, your Jinx, and all your Dark Eldar can benefit from that psychic power.
Right.
Gone.
Yeah.
Faction psychic powers should only work with that faction.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think it's smart. I mean, again, there's always these unintended consequences that come up, and game design is hard. I mean, people who are like, I could do better than GW. I'm like, okay, if you say so, but I mean, these guys,
but just how on it they are. They just have their finger, their thumbs, their toes on the pulse,
and they're watching it.
And they're watching it.
Yeah. I think it's great. It's better than ever.
Oh, and of course, the Castellan going up in points was welcome.
Yeah.
And no more 3++s on Castellan nights. Oh, thank you, God.
Yeah, that was a big one.
And I also like how they adjusted a little bit of the flyers and assault and that kind of thing. How they were, they kind of went back to
that
it.
was interesting to see.
Well, because they had such a negative reaction. They're like, okay, so maybe we can do something, that helps, but we need to solve this problem. And I think they're
But that right there really proves how
in tune with it.
In tune and flexible they are with making this game the best that it can be for everybody involved.
I mean, that's what they want to do, right? To have, it's so funny because occasionally you'll hear people say things like, they hate my army. I'm like, nobody over there hates any army. I'll tell you that right now. Like, they want it to be the best it could possibly be. And, of course you're going to make missteps. This is a complicated piece of code, effectively, that they're working on.
Yes.
So, anyway.
I was happy about that.
Jody, what'd you play?
So, as mentioned, some little first, second, third ed combo blender versions of Space Hulk. Lots of Space Hulk. It's really fun. The guys are starting to gain names. We got Hector on the Heavy Flamer, and Danger Dave, who's the lone dude with just a power fist who seems to somehow win fights with Gene Stealers. So, but I mean, just credit to this old game that still is just a hoot to play.
Great.
Still a hoot to play.
Still hard as hell to win as the Marines.
Yeah, they just die. It's like, no, I'm doing good.
They need a little loyal 32 in Space Hulk, apparently.
What's that?
Some bodies to shove in front of those Gene Stealers and
unless you're the
clog the hallways.
Ultramarines chaplain at Adepticon.
Yeah, those named characters really help. But the highlight of my games played has to be that my buddy Matt has spent the last 2 months painting up a Gene Stealer cult army. He got it up to about 75 power level. I asked him to rein it in on and it's all infantry, no vehicles yet.
Oh my goodness.
So he's got 75 power level of infantry he painted in about 2 months. So credits to him. They look really sharp, they look really sharp, period.
Yeah.
Also, this is Matt's first time painting 40K. He's done some other tabletop games a little bit, but nothing at that scale. Looks great. We got to play his inaugural game. I did ask him to rein it back to 50 power level. And he didn't know I had my sister's army. So I was like, oh, I have a great army to fight cult versus
super
sororitas. That's super
theming.
themey. I was like, sweet. So that's what prompted Painting Sisters kind of out of the blue. It was like, oh, I want to add some stuff to this army, some pieces that never quite got finished. Our first game was a lot of learning for Matt. We did the mission where there's 5 or 6 objectives out, and then as you claim them at the end of your turn, you roll, and when somebody hits a 6, that's the objective for the game. Yeah. Unfortunately, that objective landed right in front of my gun line, and charging into, I will say for the chapter approved, because I hadn't, the chapter approved rules, I hadn't really taken them for a spin in full form. Man, sisters don't want for bolter rounds. They put down some shots.
They put down some serious firepower.
Yeah,
and I'll be honest, I think they're only going to get better. No, only Adeptus Astartes do.
Right. They don't need it.
And Chaos.
Okay.
Only Astartes do.
Okay.
So yeah, you can, without really even trying, you can get them at. So you got 15 sisters in a squad. They're all, or 20. They're all hitting on 2s because they can get a +1, re-rolling 1s, and you don't even have to try that hard.
Yeah. That sounds good.
They put down a ton of fire. And then you can take like those heavier squads that have like multi-meltas and that kind of thing. And oh man, those squads can be brutal.
All right. Didn't have any idea, just was like, oh, hey, Arcoflagellants. I've had an old unit of these forever. Let me dust those guys out. And I got this cool priest with a chainsaw and like, cool. And I started reading through it. I was like, that seems good. So legitimately, kind of joke, but like, apologies if this is triggering. They have a stratagem literally called something like, it's a trigger word for the Arcoflagellants. You trigger them. And then their D3 or their D3 attacks become 3 attacks.
Oh my goodness.
Per attack.
Yeah.
Well, the preacher gives them an additional attack each.
So nice. 6.
So they have 9 attacks each.
My gosh.
And they don't die. And even if you kill them, they still get to fight. So at the end of the turn, you got to roll a D6. And if you roll a 6, the guy dies. But
who cares?
I'll take that option.
Yeah. Yeah, that was, they got charged by Gene Stealers. The Gene Stealers rolled poorly, and then the Gene Stealers were gone.
Wow. That is awesome.
And it was like, whoa, that was really neat. Matt learned a ton. He got a follow-up game against Josh, and work has been...
Our Josh?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. They play that other tabletop game with lightsabers and whatnot.
Right.
Together. So Matt and I are just we're a month out from teacher summer, and it's been insane lately. So we're super anxious, he and I, to really start getting some 40K in, just because our schedules are really, really compatible, obviously. Right. So yeah, that was huge to new player in the area.
I also like when you guys hit summer, because then you're around more.
Yeah.
And we can suddenly do more stuff. It's a lot of fun.
Heck yeah.
So, all right. Okay. Well, anybody else got anything else to add before we go to break and then come back and kick off the actual show?
I want to play a game. I can't wait for tomorrow.
I'm
jonesing.
You know how you say you jonesing? Yeah. I
jonesing.
am really jonesing.
I think it's the sound of the dice, maybe, just like
something
we're addicted to. Yeah.
All right. Well, we'll be right back.
Great Scott, 00. Foam Finger's destroying all the models with his rough touch.
Oh, Mullins Penny. Don't you worry. John is on the case.
How is that, John?
I'm going to warn the world that they should be using the soft blue foam with the hard cases. Foam Finger will never ruin another model again.
You mean Operation KR? Is the world ready for that, John?
The world is ready. I'll make sure of it. The only way is to spoil Foam Finger's plans.
Hard cases with the soft foam is the only answer. You've convinced me, John. Let's move forward with Operation KR.
The name's Jond. Jimmy Jond.
Oh, John. See? Give 00 John the figures for this mission.
Go to krmulticase.com for some of the best storage and transport solutions for your Army. Match almost limitless combinations of cases and trays in the KR transport system to suit your personal requirements. Reasonably priced, KR allows you to transport your minis safely to and from the tabletop, no matter where that battlefield is.
Hard on the outside, soft in the middle. KR Cases is where John always gets his foam. KR Hard Cases for soft blue foam.
And we're back. And again, we're going to be talking about the Enigmas of the Xenos in just a minute. But I wanted to talk briefly because we were having a discussion while we were off air about kind of customer service.
Yep.
And, you know, I have to say, some of this, almost all this new equipment I bought through a company called Sweetwater, which I had never heard of before. Dan Boyd of 40K Badcast kind of pointed out to me before. And I just want to tell this little story and then how this kind of dovetails into gaming stuff.
Yep.
So I've ordered this recording device, the Rodecaster Pro. It's specifically designed for podcasters. It's amazing. It's amazing. These guys could see it. I'm loving playing with
The colors, man.
The colors on it are beautiful.
Yeah.
But everything does something. It's very easy to use. It's very easy to program. Like one of the best pieces of equipment I've ever bought. Dan Boyd pointed this out to me while we were at Adepticon. It's the cat's meow. All right.
My dude.
Super back ordered because it's super popular. I promise you that podcasters all over the place are going to be using this device in short order. Like all these podcasts that you listen to, they will be using this device. It's just super. It's designed for podcasters. So great. Super back ordered because it's super popular. I had tried to order it through Guitar Center. Get a, hey, it's back ordered. It'll be available May 5th. Around May 2nd or so, I look at my order and I see now it's back ordered to May 30th. And I'm borrowing at this point because my board is bad. I'm borrowing Brian's board. And I'm like, I can only borrow this board so long. He needs it, So I said, I can't believe this thing's back ordered. What am I going to do? I look around. I find Sweetwater says on their site, we have it in stock. And I'm like, there's no way. There's no way. But you know what? I'm going to go ahead and order it from them. And I'm going to cancel my order for Guitar Center. And worst comes to worst, I get it on the 30th, but there's no way they have it in stock. What's going to happen is I'm going to place the order. I'm going to get an email that says, sorry, it's back ordered, right? Just wasn't updated on our site or whatever. I'm real pessimistic. You can hear that in my voice, right? So I place the order. I get a confirmation email. Like, okay, cool. Any minute now I'll get the email that says, back ordered. No, nothing. I'm driving home from work because I placed the order at work. I'm driving home. I get a phone call from Sweetwater. Hey, this is Myron from Sweetwater. I'm like, oh, here it comes. We're back ordered. Hey, I just wanted to give you a call. We got your order here. Thanks for choosing us. How'd you hear about us? Well, my friend Dan told me about you. Okay. Well, look, I've got the device right here. It's going to ship out to you tomorrow. Just want to give you a call. I'm your personal shopping assistant. If you need anything, you can just call me back. And I'm
unbelievable,
blown away.
Yeah.
I'm like, what? This is an online
that exists
order.
in 2019,
right?
Really?
So I'm like, okay, Myron, thanks, man. Like, this is awesome. Thank you.
Here's my personal cell phone number.
Almost there's a number I can call that I can get him, but. So then he's like, listen, it's going to ship out tomorrow, but I'm not going to be here tomorrow. I'm going to pass it over to Doug or whatever the guy's name was. I have an email from him too. I'm going to pass it over to this guy who will give you a call tomorrow when it ships. Make sure everything's on the up and up.
Sure.
And I'm like, yeah, right. Okay. Well, like that kind of handoff never really works, right? Next day shows up and I'm super excited and here comes the email. Yep. It has now shipped. Here's your tracking number. I'm like, man, did I order like the right device? Because like these guys had it and I'm kind of doubting. And then, here's a call from Sweetwater. Hey, this is Doug from Sweetwater. Look, Myron's out today. I'm filling in. He goes, yeah, Myron said you'd call. He goes, yeah, so I just want to let you know the thing just shipped out today. It'll be at your house in 2 days because I paid for like 2-day shipping. if you need anything, just give me a call. Myron will be back Monday. I'm like, yeah, okay, this is amazing.
Yeah, that's
Best
unreal.
customer service I have ever had on an online order. I mean, could you
and
imagine
a quality product too?
Could you imagine if Amazon, if you place an order, they go,
Yeah,
at that scale, they can't do it. But here, like these guys were on it. And where this dovetails into gaming is, and this is where I was about to go when I said, let's just record this. How many of us have thought, I want to open a game store, right? I've heard other gamers say, I want to open a game store. And I go, well, I hope you like retail because that's all it is.
Pretty much what it is.
It's just retail.
With
And
really,
I hope you're
with
good
really
at
cool
it.
stuff.
Yeah, no, it's great that you're passionate about the product. And the thing here at Sweetwater's, they're super passionate about the audio-visual stuff, right? These guys work for bands. Like he was telling me, I've worked with, this person. I'm like, oh, wow, okay, cool. It's great that you're passionate about the product, but the only differentiator for game stores right now, in my mind, is their level of customer service.
Absolutely.
And unless you can provide a fantastic, the War Store is a great example. Neil at the War Store,
awesome.
and they are not an advertiser, but I remember a long time ago, I placed an order for like the huge Tyranid box set, and it was back ordered, blah, blah, and it didn't ship. And then finally I call and I get Neil on the phone, and he's like, you know what? I'm having a problem getting this thing. I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to take everything in its individual boxes that consists of that, and I'll ship those out to you same price. And I'm like,
Yeah, whenever I had a problem with them,
wow.
they would just. I
fix it.
had a bunch of demonettes get lost in the warp. He just sent them again.
They fix it.
Yep.
And that kind of customer service gets you a customer for life. I am now a Sweetwater customer for life. Like if I need audio visual stuff, unless I need it that day, I'm going to order it from these guys. So for me, you said it was going to kind of trigger something
A little bit.
with you. For me, it's all about customer service, especially in the gaming industry. So when I hear stores are closing down, like I get that it's a very competitive space. There is no doubt that it's a difficult competitive space. But the one thing you can do to differentiate yourself from the next guy is your level of customer service needs to be off the hook.
Absolutely. So what snaps me a little bit about this is Aaliyah and I both, even when we met, we were both working in customer service in retail. And very clearly it's just a matter of training your people. It is a skill. It is like anything else. Can you provide good customer service? Do you know what to do? Yeah. And it's not hard stuff. I mean, you can hire high school kids and train them to do it, and they'll do it very, very well. Like this doesn't require, now if it's a specialist product, you need some specialist knowledge, but it's not difficult. The number of times I've walked into a game store and Aaliyah notices it just as much, and doubly so as a woman walking into a game store, and you're not greeted.
Yeah.
Or it's like, hey, how you doing? Good. And then they go back to playing their game of Magic cards or just sitting at the counter sorting through.
They're not engaged at all.
Not engaged, not tuned in. And it's funny because people for years have railed about the red shirt attack in the old GW stores, but at least you got service. At least you got helped. You didn't have to go.
I think
find
there's a
somebody.
fine line.
There is.
There is
Go
a
ahead.
line.
Go
No,
ahead,
there's
Justin.
good customer service for sure.
Yeah, it's just that fine line of, I guess it comes down to reading your client.
Yes.
And if you walk into a store and you can tell when somebody looks clearly confused or if they need help. I mean, I agree. Greet people. Say, hey, welcome, right?
And mean it.
And
mean it.
And that's where the GW piece, I think, kind of fell flat in those days. Hey, do you need,
It was very
what army are you working
it
on?
was too scripted.
It was
Amen.
super scripted.
Yep.
Yeah, so when you break that down, you say, look, this is another human and they have unique needs. And that's always something that I try to incorporate into my staff members.
Well, you're very personable too. I mean, when people meet you, you're warm, you're funny, you engage with them, and you read them, like you said. You read your audience.
That's all it comes down to. And if you can learn to read people, it'll take you, a lot better places in life.
Oh, for sure.
Don't treat everybody. I never thought independent characters would go down this road, but just be a good person and treat everybody like they're an individual, not just a number.
Well, off air, you said something about, you go to a restaurant and you get really good customer service, and the food could be Denny's turn and burn diner food. And the term you used, you said, if the server cares, if the person in service actually cares. Yeah. And I'm
it goes a long way.
Yeah. And it's not asking a lot, like just actually care about what you're doing. And
that's hard. It's hard. I mean, I'm not going to say it's not hard, but listen, you came from a customer service background, Jody. You came from one. I came from one, right? And I will tell you now, at 49 years old, as a senior director in a technical company, those customer service skills have served me so well
Hugely.
in my career.
Yeah.
To the point where it's there's 3 things you need to do to keep your job, right? It's
Show up on time.
be there,
Be there.
be present,
Uh-huh.
right? Be easy to work with and nice and have people like you and know how to do your job.
Sure.
Right? If you can do any 2 of those 3, you're typically okay.
2 out of 3 ain't bad.
2 out of 3, you're going to pretty much keep the job,
And I think this ties in really well with like being at the tabletop with somebody.
Yeah.
Oh,
too,
yeah.
Of like, don't treat especially if you're doing like pickup games at a game store, of just really feel that person out and don't treat them like maybe you had a bad last game. Well, maybe this person is not that person.
This
And
person is not that person.
So
yeah, it's a good point.
ties in well. Yeah, it's just basic fundamentals.
Anyway, it's just an experience I had that it kind of blew my mind.
Yeah.
And I think
Yeah,
that's
that's
worth
great.
sharing. I mean, these guys don't sponsor us or anything, but Jesus, I wish they would.
Kind of sad though in this day and age though, when you get customer service like that, you're like,
And you're
"Damn,
surprised."
it does exist.
Right. You said that when we were talking off air, and I was like, yeah, that's actually a great point. Like, this used to be the norm.
Yeah.
You pulled up to the gas station, guys came out, cleaned your windshield, pumped your gas. Blah, blah,
A simple smile,
goes a long way.
Yeah.
Anyway.
There's yeah.
Well,
it's-
way off topic. I don't know why that was
Back to
important to
grim
me.
dark.
And now
But
we
in
bring
that
you
note,
regularly scheduled mutants.
There's no good guys in 40K. So. All right. So again, this show, we have done the Champions of 40K for the Imperium. We've done it for Chaos now. Now we're moving on to the various Xenos races. And again, we're picking usually, sometimes less prominent.
Yeah, no
characters.
Primarchs.
Sometimes
or Primarch level.
Sometimes
folks.
we're picking, pretty prominent characters, but I like to go for the kind of guys in the background a little bit more. That's not to say I won't. And these are not necessarily our favorites, but they are ones that we like.
Yeah.
For example, I didn't pick Aramin in the last thing. He's one of
Still
my favorites.
head reeling that you didn't.
Well, I tried to avoid like the obvious, right? I want to
Next
kind of
episode.
delve into areas that people don't think about a lot. So that's kind of my objective here. So we've each gone through and picked 2 Xenos characters that we think are fascinating. We're going to do this kind of round robin style, but first we'll go through our first one. And for me, my first one is Boss Snickrot of the Orcs.
It's so funny you picked him because I was literally
Really?
because I picked Marbo.
Yeah.
On the last one, I always love those sneaky assassin commando type
Yeah,
guys.
well, I'm going to talk about that in a little bit, but
yeah.
he's the one I chose. I felt the Orcs needed to be represented in this go around.
Nod then to Snickrot because I was like, you jumped on it first. And I was like,
nice.
That is funny.
all right. Yeah, all 3 of us were
Interesting.
like, so
I'll be curious to hear what your guys' thoughts are on why you would have picked him compared to why I did. But okay, Justin, who'd you pick?
So I picked Commander Shadowsun of the Tau Empire.
Excellent choice.
I didn't pick Shadowsun. No.
Playing against the grain. You know what? Here's the truth of
I'd
the
have
matter.
to go home and lay in a bathtub with some.
Here's the truth of the
razor
matter.
blades.
If we had a Tau Codex, I would have picked a Tau character. I was seriously like I didn't have a Tau Codex. And my Forge World alien codex is missing. I don't know where that went. But
Justin, do you know where it is?
yeah, any chance you
No, I looked. I do not have it.
I would
do
have.
not.
I was like, I think I told you with 90% certainty. I think Justin might have.
I am no longer. I'm going to Google search rules before I borrow one of your books from now on, Carl.
Yeah, it's gone missing.
I almost picked a Tau hero as well, but I was going to take the Fire Warrior from the game, Fire Warrior, because that dude
that would have been
is a
interesting.
juggernaut.
That would have been interesting.
Oh, I thought you'd be livid because it's
No.
so absurd.
No, I don't care. No, I think that's funny.
So, Justin, who did you actually pick?
Asdrubal Vect,
nice choice.
Supreme Lord. So while you're not going big stream,
You go mainstream.
I'm going mainstream. This guy's so much fun to talk about.
All
I'm
right.
so glad
Well,
you
that's
did.
cool.
I went with the Beast of Kalth, Old One Eye.
Okay. All right. All excellent choices. So who is this hero? What organization do they belong to? Let's talk a little bit about their background. I'll go ahead and go first. Snickrot, who's also called Boss Snickrot or Snickrot the Stalker, is a skilled orc commando. He's like the special forces version of an orc, and that's one of the things that I'll talk about in a little bit. The interesting thing is he leads like these orc special forces units known as the Red Skull Commandos with a K and a Z, which I love.
Course.
Yeah.
Of course. It's orc culture.
And they're fighting effectively on the jungle areas, the equatorial section of Armageddon, which some secrets have been revealed about recently. Armageddon is actually where did the Emperor lay down? Where did the Emperor fight the orcs? Ulanor.
Yeah.
Armageddon is actually Ulanor.
Oh.
That's right.
Yeah,
That's right.
Yeah, which is kind of cool. That's why the orcs keep like coming back to it. So I thought that was kind of interesting. I think I've got that right. Anyway, so there's these like Astra Militarum orc hunters on Armageddon, and apparently they're only afraid of one orc, and that's Snickrot. Like they have all these tales of like the orc that like comes at you silently in the night and like, you know, cuts out your eyes and slits throats and all this stuff. And they tell, you know, I picture like a bunch of Rambo guys kind of sitting around a fire telling ghost story tales of this guy of this orc that could, you know, and they're telling these tales and he's like sitting actually outside of the firelight listening to the tales. Like he's that awesome. He was originally a commando boss for war boss Killscar and acted as like personal assassin and executioner. And then eventually Snickrot led a bunch of ambushes against these Catachan jungle fighters. And he came face to face with their leader, Colonel Ironhand Strachan.
The man.
Who a fighting was had between the two of them. Snickrot basically loses that duel. He gets defeated. He's injured. I think he like falls off a building or something like that.
Off a waterfall.
Well, wouldn't
Falls
be
off the top of like Predator style. Like
Okay.
Amen.
Yeah. And then they thought he was killed, but he survived. And then basically he goes and leases his talents out to, of course, Gazgul Thraka's forces. So, I mean, look, well, I'll talk about why I chose him either, but that's who this guy is. Yeah. I think that is a pretty cool backstory, and I really like orcs. Like I really do like orcs.
What's not to like?
I used to think they're really goofy and funny, and then I'll be honest.
And then Brian Nelson came around with fantastic sculpts.
Actually, I read Steve Parker's book, the one where the Crimson Fists fight the orcs. What's their planet?
The Crimson Fists and the orcs. Yeah,
Rhin's World.
Rhin's World. Yeah, Rhin's World. And that book, like the orcs were really vicious in that book. And I was like, oh yeah, these guys are cool. So,
it's been interesting to see Games Workshop's kind of orc history, if you will.
I do like the humor level to them. I don't like it taken to the extreme. I like it when it's kind of on the fringes. Like it's hard to explain.
The orc-volution, as it were.
Orc-volution. Okay. Yeah. So anyway, that's me. Justin, what about you?
Asdrubal
Who
Vex.
is Asdrubal Vex?
I think he's the prime example of the powerless rise. You know, he's an individual. I guess I'll share his lore for later. But basically, right now
now's the time to share it, man.
So this is an individual who's been around a long time, like Dante old, since like he was there to witness the fall of the Eldar as a child.
Okay,
so he's been around
longer than Dante.
Yeah, he's
a long time. And obviously, Dark Eldar have ways to increase their vitality and increase their life, which we'll get more into. But I think it's cool to see the story of somebody who literally went from a slave to the supreme overlord of Camorra.
Yeah.
And the ways that he got there are purely Drukarian in nature, and it's fun to read about. And he's almost Zinchian in his machinations.
Okay.
You know, he's got this... And who knows, maybe there's a little bit of Zinch happening there, but he just kind of seems to know what's going on at all times. And he's not just this kind of lead from the front, Marnius Calgar, type character. He's just kind of behind the scenes. He's the puppet master, pulling the strings of this complete savage society of hedonists and somehow making it all work. And I think that's...
You've read that Path of the Dark Eldar series, right?
Yep.
I mean, he's kind of depicted in there a bit as like this like reigning overlord. He's almost like a unseen, but in your face. It's weird. Like he sits in this place where it's like everybody feels his presence, but he's not necessarily there all the time.
Right.
Which is really kind of an interesting approach.
Yeah, he's like Lord Varys from Game of Thrones. He's just got his little fingers and his little birds out there and everything, and
except he can fight.
Except for he hasn't fought in a little while, but maybe he'll get back out there.
Okay. Jody, how about Old One Eye?
Old One Eye is a unique Tyranid Carnifex who has the ability to regenerate himself. He has
except for his eye.
Except for his eye.
For some reason.
Well, and it gets into it that was his first time being killed. He was blasted through the head with a massive plasma cannon shot. He was a spearhead used by a tendril fleet of Hive Fleet Behemoth when it assaulted Ultramar, and the Tyranids in that initial wave were using Carnifexes as their point beast and their line breaker. Okay. Keeping in mind here that Tyranids always evolve and grow their strategies, and the longer they interact with the Imperium, the more new and different strategies they take to attack. So some hero of the long forgotten hero of the Imperium blasted him through the eye, blew his brains out, his being One Eyes, and he was dead. And they all figured, cool, got him, this big destructive Carnifex, and the wars went on. Decades later, after Behemoth's been driven, that tendril fleet's been driven off of Calth, a band of smugglers stumble across a frozen body of a Tyranid, and they decide they will thaw it out and harvest.
That sounds like an excellent plan.
Yeah, they're going to harvest the organs and sell them on the black market and trade them and make a fortune. As soon as he thaws out, though, he starts patching up and healing, and in no time, smugglers are dead. Their ship is drifted afloat, and now this One Eye is isolated from the hive mind, but his brain is also regenerated and rewired. And he reverts to his instinctive behavior, but at the same time, littler Tyranid creatures seem to be drawn to him. So while he is this destructive, killing, wrecking ball of a machine, of a Tyranid construction, also these other smaller creatures seem to be drawn to him, and he'll end up becoming his own kind of wave of destruction until he's absorbed again or found again, and then dies because they think they kill him. And then he seems to show up somewhere else a little bit later.
It's like his own little DNA strand within the hive mind that just keeps getting
absolutely
reproduced.
So,
it's cool.
Yeah, it's this very unique Carnifex that just keeps showing up.
Right. Okay, so why this hero? Like, what appeals to you about it? Well, I touched on mine a little bit. Like, I like special forces stuff in terms of, like, I used to love reading Tom Clancy novels. I was in the Army. Not that I was in any type of special forces unit. Actually, my roommate wanted to very much go into special forces. And I was like, kind of like, yeah, okay. This is when I first got there, and he was a specialist at the time. And I get there, he's this tall, thin guy named Dan. And I thought, okay, he was super nice. He was too nice. I was like, there's no way, And next thing I know, he's like, well, I went to French commando school. And I'm like, what was that? What's that? And he's like, well, you occasionally we get loaned out to go like take training from other forces. Uh-huh. Well, French commando school is pretty freaking hardcore. I mean, you pass or fail as a team. They had a guy break his leg during the training. Well, you gotta
tough it out.
Yeah, tough it out. You got to carry him the whole time, everywhere. So everybody made a point of carrying him. I mean, they had a medic look at the leg and then set it and everything. But you either continue the training or you fail. If you want to drop out, sure, your whole group is out. Nope, I'm going to stick it out. Yeah, I mean, they were hardcore. Actually, in the news today, 2 French commandos were killed trying to rescue some Americans down somewhere. So,
wow.
I mean, it's that kind of thing interests me. This guy ended up actually, next thing I knew, he's like, well, I'm out of here. I'm going to Special Forces training, be a Special Forces medic. I'm like, holy cow.
Yeah, it doesn't get much more hardcore than that. Special Forces medic.
Yeah, but he was super chill guy, just nicest guy you'd ever meet. You never would know it. But so I've always found that very fascinating. Like, I like playing games like Doug and I were playing Ghost Recon Wildlands for a while online, right? I like those kinds of environments and stories, and what's better than a special forces orc, right?
But you also have that dichotomy of like, here's an orc who's he's an orc. Orcs are known for like not really being, super stealthy kind of.
Right. They're kind of just in your face.
They're in your
charge
face. I'm going to gut you and crush your skull. And this guy is he's
playing against that grain.
Yeah.
And there was an interesting article recently in White Dwarf where God, I'm trying to think of who it was. I just talked about this in
the Phil Kelly article
in our Patreon thing. I think it was Phil Kelly. Yeah, Phil Kelly was talking about characters and how you develop characters. And you have a character that is the exemplar character, right? An ultramarine. You when somebody says, "Oh, this is an ultramarine," what do you think?
nobility,
Follows the
follow
rules,
the doctrines.
Yep. So to make it ultramarine interesting, you go anti, standard.
Or maybe he's conflicted between the two.
Right.
Yeah.
Or maybe, he's the guy that like he always like, he follows the codex but seems to break the rules of the codex. Yet always seems to succeed for some reason. And then all of a sudden you're like, oh well, what's this guy's story? Here you have an anti, standard orc who's going kind of against the grain. But I also like the fact that orcs take what humans are doing in their human society and adopt it to their own kind of thing in a lot of ways. And so here you have an example. I see you shaking your head. You don't agree.
I don't agree. So when we did the orc episode, one of the things I love that came out of that discussion is every orc is just hardwired as a predator.
Okay.
But how they choose to predate it's hardwired. It's not a choice.
Right.
And for whatever reason, Snickrot is hardwired that scaring the snot out of somebody and then cutting their throat is the best way to kill somebody.
Yeah.
And it's that like, although I will say that because we all were drawn to this guy, what drew me to him is he's the only example that I think makes blood axes cool.
Agreed.
Because blood axes do read as like, they just adopt what humans do, which is like, no, orcs are cooler than that. You don't imitate the thing that sucks, imitate something cooler, and if you're an orc, humans suck and you're cooler. But Snickrot, for whatever reason, I don't read him that way, as though he's not imitating. He's just hardwired this way.
I mean, when I say imitate, I don't mean like he sees something and copies it. Right. I mean, genetically, they seem to like just
whatever works
graduate to that kind
of
thing.
So that's really interesting. You don't like the blood axe kind of creed.
No.
I've always thought that is so cool to have like these orcs that, whether it's like they visually witness Imperial, armies marching to battle and the tanks and the uniforms and the fatigues, or whether it's just like kind of somehow got ingrained in their DNA because they ate too many Imperial Guardsmen or something, right? I've always thought that was so cool to see like just more militaristic orcs. Maybe it's just because back to like Rogue Trader 2nd edition German uniform wearing orcs.
And those ones looked really cool
at
that time. They were great. No, and I think that's also one of the great things about orcs in general is each person. So for you that works, and for me it doesn't.
Yeah,
Whereas I'm Bad Moons, and somebody else would be like, no, Goths, like get it right, like which I love that the Goths are like, no, everybody else is doing it wrong, which is like every single clan.
Sure.
So the fact that you're like, no, that totally works for me, and I'm like, nah, it doesn't work for me.
Well, that's the best thing about it is there's a different flavor for everybody.
Right. And here's Snickrot that offers something exactly as you said, something totally against the grain.
But interestingly enough, all three of us thought that was something appealing.
I wonder how much that model had to have played effect on that too, which we're going
to talk to models in a second because that's where I really want to
Doesn't hurt.
talk. Justin, let's talk a little bit about what appeals to you about Vect.
So I think that it comes down to my love of the original Druki, the original Dark Elves and Malekith. I think that because Asdrubal Vect has a lot of similarities with the original Witch King from the world that was, and just how he's just this supreme evil overlord behind the scenes. And just like I said, pulling the strings, he's got his teeth in everything. And that really is cool. It's cool to read about. It's cool to talk about because a lot of times you hear about Camorra and you go, how is it possible that this place could possibly function? Like there's no way. And I think Asdrubal, he inserts that little bit of reality into this is how it happens because there's a big time puppet master who's behind everything. It doesn't matter how small, how big, he's just got his little agents everywhere. And it's just fun. It's cool to read about.
If I don't know. It's I was going to make a comparison that as I thought about it more, it doesn't really mesh for me.
For me, because I adore this character, as once upon a once, back when there was a very thin codex that explained what the heck Dark Eldar were, which wasn't much, the idea that worked for me that I built around was organized crime, like mafia.
Oh, yeah,
organized
to the
crime.
extent of, yeah.
And it, for me, that's when they then fleshed out Vect, I was like, oh my God, like they did what I was thinking. And that's how I've always seen him, is that notion of like, he is the Godfather and he doesn't have to fight, but everybody answers to him. Everybody knows he's there.
Yeah.
And it's this just insidious influence. And then take it to the Komara place of just terror, fear, and like, now what scares those guys?
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's exactly
And that's
it,
the interesting thing. Like, even the people in there are afraid of him. Like, it's a very interesting,
and not
the
just
book
like the
is quite
people,
good.
but like, I mean, these are higher
Everything
up
is afraid of him.
archons and hierarchs and all the nobility of Komora are just like.
Meanwhile, they're
speaking in
constantly
hushed
trying
whispers.
to suck up to him, right, and gain favor and position.
Yeah, it's all about political intrigue
Yeah.
that ultimately kind of pinnacles up to him, and then going back to the fact that this guy started out as a slave,
Yeah.
and worked his way up to this point is pretty amazing.
Yeah.
And shows his Zinch taint. I
Yeah.
think.
All right, Jody.
So for me, what, as I don't know how you guys felt. For me, working through this episode was a little bit tough in my research, because so many of the Xenos races, like, I felt like the characters weren't really well represented. So when I started looking into it, I went a lot of different directions. And then for whatever reason, the notion of looking at a Tyranid, who is typically, they're so faceless, then going, but wait, they do have characters. They do have named characters. How does that work? And it was in looking at that really kind of brought the whole thing to life. I don't know. Did you guys find it any more difficult to do the research in Xenos versus Chaos or Imperial?
I didn't, but I must say I find it highly fascinating that going back to the orc thing, that you feel that way about the orcs, but yet a Tyranid special character gels with you. Because I'm kind of the opposite in that realm of like, Tyranids don't need special characters. They're meat for
They're
the
just
fodder.
biomass, right?
So I find that, but
Well, I'll explain why, because it's exactly to that point of why this worked for me.
because it shouldn't make sense, but it's somehow kind of
They nailed it.
Yeah, I did find it a little more difficult to do this kind of research, in particular because it's very rare that a Black Library book is written from the perspective of any of these alien races. That's why the Eldar and Dark Eldar get a little bit of a bump in that, because there have been books focused on that.
and they're a lot more humanoid.
There have
quote
been
unquote.
very few stories. There's been no books, but there's a couple short stories written from the orc perspective. And certainly none from the Tyranid perspective, because we can't really comprehend the Tyranid perspective. So yeah, I mean, in that sense, the research was a little bit trickier.
So as I dug
Whereas
in,
space, whereas hey, what's your favorite Space Marine chapter? Well, geez,
yeah, pick your scoop of ice cream.
Right.
We got them all.
Right.
Yeah. So it was literally that, like, struggling and then starting to go, well, what about Tyranids? Because they do have named characters. And I didn't start with Old One Eye. I think the first one I looked at was Death Leaper, because I've always liked lictors. Yeah. I was like, okay. And then I looked at the Red Terror, because that model Once Upon a Once was incredible. And I was like, oh, that's kind of a cool idea. And I looked into it. And they aren't, or even the Swarm Lord, none of those are actually named characters as we typically think of named characters. But Old One Eye actually is. And this is where the whole thing worked for me, was that adding characters to the Tyranid line seems totally counterintuitive, like you were saying. But it's such a boon, because what they are, exactly as you said a little bit ago, Justin, is they're this unique DNA thread that's developed somewhere in the hive mind. So where there could be a dozen Swarm Lords running around actually at any time. There could be a dozen Death Leapers running around.
It's just a rare strain.
It's a rare strain, and it's something that they say for, like, we need this really, really particular thing. Yeah. And then the Tyranids adapt this very uniquely named thing, which I was like, what a cool way.
That is a cool concept, because one of the things that I struggle in playing the Tyranids with is like I don't
Lack
have
of character.
Yeah, I have a lack of character. And I know there are people out there who like, I don't like to play with the name characters, but I do.
I'm usually one who doesn't.
Yeah. And for me, it's hard for me to relate to them on the table. And so I'm like, well, you know, so my Hive Tyrant died. Hive Tyrant X died. I've tried to like name them and like be like, oh, this is a special Hive Tyrant and that kind of thing. You know, there was a campaign I ran for a while, but you could give abilities to various characters or HQs or whatnot. And so I was like, oh, I'm going to paint this special Tyranid that is, you know, I don't remember. I had like a background and stuff for him.
It's almost easier to get their character through their exploits.
Yes.
As opposed to like, this is right.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
So you add like slain Space Marines to his base or something. and this
Yeah,
guy's-
I mean, their name is always something that was either named to them by either the Imperials or the Eldar,
Right.
or maybe even the Orcs.
and I think that's the outtake. That's
Yeah.
that's
The Doom
way
of
to go.
Malantai, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Like, so anyway,
So,
interesting.
Yeah, so Old One Eye though seems to be an actually unique thread, because once he got blasted through the melon and then reprogrammed, like regenerated, like regeneration's a common enough thing, which is actually really interesting that at one time Carnifex's regenerating was the most common thing in the world, as we'll talk about in just a minute here, so much so that it's on the sprue. They don't do that anymore.
Right.
They no longer regenerate.
Right.
And I wonder if it's because it was Old One Eye's thing. And the narratives actually, I found shifts in the narrative where at one time it was like, oh, he was reabsorbed, and then they spit him out like these other things. And it was so effective, they started regenerating him. And now you don't see it because Old One Eye, now that he regenerates and his brain's wired a little funny, he became his own point.
Right.
And what really spoke to me about that concept was this idea of the problem of Tyranids. And as a former Tyranid player, it's one of the armies I sold off and have never gone back to, is I had that same struggle you had, Carl. And I was realizing and looking through this, that the main fleets are really uninteresting because it's so alien. Like, how do you identify that? And it is, you can't, I mean, unless you're going to paint 40,000 points of Tyranids, you can't even show a fraction of what a Tyranid invasion would look like. Sure. But a splinter fleet or a tendril arm of a fleet could be relatively small. And Old One Eye literally could be that point of of that unique tendril. So in a weird way, it was almost, you know, as always, the danger with these or show of force is like,
maybe I should do Tyranids.
What if I just did just a little tendril fleet, you know, but it's that idea of that he is actually unique, but it still folds into this, no, they're the unique gene strain, but he, again, that idea of playing against the grain,
right?
He is a unique gene strain that is actually broken free a little bit, but he has no, because it's just an autonomous killing machine now. Right. Like, what does that even mean to him? Nothing, but it is unique.
He's getting blasted and the brain severed his connection to the...
That's one of the theories, is that like it's and that's why other creatures are drawn to him, is he's giving off this different energy. And so they think it's a synapse when it's not.
But wouldn't he just be assimilated when the Tyranid fleet?
Well, that's the thing, is because he dies and he gets left behind, if the planet somehow, and there's a lot of stories like this where they end up on ships ending up in other, like they end up on a ship, or like the smugglers took him on the ship, then he thaws out, wrecks the ship ends up on a new planet. He's running around now destroying the whole planet.
Right.
Somebody comes in, they kill him, they do the cleanup, and then his little, you know, claw arm that's sitting on the ship grows a new one, and off he goes again. Rinse, wash, repeat forever. Okay. And the fleet never quite catches up with it because giant, massive, slow-moving fleets.
Burn it with fire.
So that's me and Old One Eye.
Okay. So let's talk about the models of these guys. You know, is this the first version of it, or the prior versions, that kind of thing? When I think about this Snickrot model, like, it blows my mind every time. Like, this model is just all kinds of awesome. From his stance, from the way he's holding his weapons, to his night vision goggles on him. When this guy, and I've included a picture of him in the notes, when this guy is painted well, like, this is one of my favorite orc models of all time.
Is he doing the...
Yeah, well, that's the thing, right? Like, he's holding that finger up, and I feel like he's kind of like, hey, be quiet. Like, that's what it looks like to me. I don't know what you guys think about it, but it just blows my mind. I love it.
It's the gesture of it. Either whether he is shushing, and I don't know how orcs with their giant toothy maws shush, because that's not a.
But when I
expression
look at that indicates silence to me.
right, or he's getting ready to point out to the other orcs where they're gonna go. Either way, but it's a beautiful ambiguity of pose.
Yeah.
Like he could be doing either.
Yeah.
He's also got like 2 daggers. Like he's in the 41st millennium, and he's just like, I got these 2 daggers. I'm gonna cut your throat.
And some big old gnarly meat hooks. And he is just savagery.
Yeah.
Upon
It's
savagery.
a great pose. Yeah. It's there is nothing wrong with this model in my mind.
It's a good example of how a model does not need to be like leaping into action to be well done.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I think the only drawback to this model right now is I think it's in fine cast if you try to buy it.
Yeah.
So get your green stuff ready.
And man, he is almost, and this is not a knock. This model is phenomenal, but how do you create the Red Skull Commandos that are cool enough to run around with him? Like, like I'm pretty well versed on orc bits. They ain't out there. Like that is a lot of green stuff, and really cared a lot to get a unit that looks like it has any business running around with him.
If you buy this model, you have to be able to do it justice, though, because it is just a fantastic model. So.
I do wonder if it wasn't for the sweet orky night vision goggles. You know, I think those really sell the model, and especially
for sure,
the paint job with the OSL. Because really, if you take away the night vision goggles and the daggers, I'm just going to be devil's advocate here.
If you take away the night vision goggles and the daggers and the way he's standing, what do you really have?
I'm just saying. I mean,
you have an orc. Well, he is an orc.
He is an orc.
You know,
I will say so recently I tried to convert up a Commandos knob for Kill Team because they're really good.
Yeah.
And it was surprisingly challenging though to get that kind of I'm sneaking along pose going.
Yeah.
I was tempted for just a minute to be like, maybe I'll just get no, I can't do that. Like, can't just, it's just a commando knob. Don't worry about it. It's not Snickrot. No, that model is Snickrot, and there's no getting around it. Like, that's him.
So good.
Yeah, he's awesome.
Justin?
He's all win.
So Asdrubale Vecht only has one version at the moment, and it is from like 97.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's held up pretty decently. I mean, it's got some babes on the boat. So basically, Asdrubale Vecht, when he came out, he had his original model was a converted Ravager. It was a Ravager that had a bunch of metal components to put on it for his Dais of Destruction.
Right.
And you had Asdrubale sitting in the middle of it on a throne, looking rather kind of bored, just kind of shooting his splinter pistol off to the edge. And he had 2 incubi.
As you do.
As you do. He's just like, there's a guy's pistol. Yeah, I'm bored. What do I do with my life? There was 2 incubi bodyguard, which at the time was cool because they were the only incubi wearing trench coats.
Yeah, I loved those figures.
And they had the gun hats. That's for you, Brian. They had the gun hats, and then there was a couple slaves on the dais because every supreme overlord of Eldar nobility needs a couple human slave girls wearing bikinis. One of them, though, was kind of cool because it was clearly a Sister of Battle.
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't realize that.
Yeah, she's got the iconic haircut. And to be fair, she's also...
breaking her chains.
Oh, I don't think I've ever
She had a dagger behind her back, and she was like breaking the chains.
And
that's kind of cool.
She's actually really muscular, but does suffer from 90s implants.
Yeah.
I mean,
I would say those models have not held up well.
No, but that is neat. And I don't think I ever actually noticed that she's going to try a thing and it's going to go poorly.
It's going to go horribly. But that's the only model. And then, of course, we got rules for good old
She
Vecht.
could roll well.
Yeah, I bet. We got rules in the 5th edition book, which we'll get more into. But we have not seen a new sculpt. And I don't think we ever will. And I kind of am okay with that.
Well, let's talk about that when we get to that point, because that's an interesting point. Okay. Jody.
All right. Well, so Old One Eye is kind of strange in that he did have a model and then he didn't, but he does. He's kind of a mess of like, does he have a model? I don't know, I guess. So the OG Screamer Killer, Jess Goodwin, got to call that one out. That model is still... It doesn't look like anything anymore. Like, that is not what any Tyranid anything looks like. But the original, like, giant scything talons wrapping forward, the kind of tubular head. That thing's just iconic. And I couldn't talk about Carnifexes without being like...
You're talking about the old Screamer Killer.
Yeah. And that thing is beautiful. Screamer Killer well before a Carnifex was a Carnifex.
Right.
And then there wasn't, somewhere around 3rd edition, right around 2000, we did get an old One Eye sculpt, and I'd actually forgotten these Carnifexes existed. It was a metal body with very large plastic arms that you tacked onto it. Very thin legs, very ponderous upper bodies, almost a rhino-like head. And old One Eye had a giant crack and, skull exposed gash down the side of his head, and was when he kind of came into existence. That era, pretty derpy grins and wobbly bottles was, wobbly bodies and derpy grins was kind of the order of the year there, like late 90s, 2000. And then we finally get the plastic Carnifex kit right around late 5th, right around 2005. And there's a regeneration head included in that kit still to this day.
Yeah.
Which again
has part of the skull exposed.
Yeah, it has part of the skull exposed, and you've got all the parts you need. Old One Eye, scything talons, crushing claws, mace tail. That's him. And you had all the parts you needed to make him right there in the kit, which is great because I don't know how many kits at that time were allowing you to do that thing of like, here's a kit to make a mainline troop. P.S. Here's the character parts.
Maybe we'll see some of that in the future. That'd be super cool.
Yeah. Right? Well, there's a couple of them still around, and it's rad. And then that kit, I think, served to partially redefine that entire range. That is when the Tyranids, as we know them, became unified. Yeah. I believe it was still Jess Goodwin behind the scenes, designing and drawing that. And I remember an article when that happened, that they redefined this is what Tyranids look like. There was a discussion about they all have 6 limbs. They all have this particular pattern of carapace. These are the non-negotiable traits of a Tyranid. That's right. Yeah. Biomorph. And then from there, it's fair game. You can do whatever you want. But these
I have to say, I mean, I think honestly, the Carnifex model now holds up very well.
Oh,
still.
Big time.
I think it's fantastic. I think the Hive Tyrant, especially the Flying Hive Tyrant's fantastic model kit. Yeah. I mean, the Tyranid range, I mean, there's a couple dated models, like some of the Hormagaunts, Termagants are a little dated, but there's things you can do with them. When I was working on mine,
my aspect warriors don't want to hear any of this.
Using a candle to like bend the tails and stuff so that they weren't just that straight tail and everybody has straight tail, made a world of difference.
Yeah, it sure does.
But I think that range holds up really well still.
Right. And to that point, today, if you were to grab a Carnifex kit and throw that regen head on it,
that's old
now
One
you
Eye.
are building old One Eye.
Yep.
Like that that in a weird way, it's come kind of full
and you
circle.
can hit that thing with a Dremel and kind of add some battle damage.
Oh yeah.
As well you
to
should
its carapace and stuff. That would be amazing.
And that's honestly the last little vestige of like maybe someday Tyranids again for me is to do the Monster Mash list where it's I have no desire to paint hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of Hormaterma genus Steelergons. But the notion of,
I have 300 of them in a drawer painted green at the moment, like base painted green.
All I gotta say is thank God for the airbrush.
Yeah, and I keep telling myself like
maybe
with an airbrush.
I started doing the carapaces with the airbrush.
Yeah, no, but the notion of here's a phalanx of Carnifex. Here's a flight of whatever. I don't even remember all the name of the giant Gribblies, but yeah. And the rules really allow for that now. I mean, you're going to be a lot CP short, but who cares? You've got
actually
Godzilla,
the army holds up pretty well.
Stompy
it's a fun
robots
army to play now.
Beings. Yeah. So just this really interesting evolution of, from earliest days of the 80s to now, really tracking that kind of growth of sculpting and aesthetic throughout GW's heritage with this one character, which seemed fitting that he's this like regenerating being. And then your model, you can kind of watch him grow and regenerate over time as well.
Deep.
Thanks. I was reaching there.
All right. Well, let's talk briefly about the rules for each of these guys as they're represented. Snickrot is interesting. He has a couple ways that you can deploy him that make him kind of fun. On his own is not really the best. I mean, look, in close combat, he's pretty good, right? He has a weapon skill of 2+. He's strength 6. He's toughness 5. He has 6 wounds and gets 6 attacks, right?
What are the strength and damage on his attacks?
Yeah, so he has Mork's Teeth, which are his melee weapons, which are AP -1, damage 2, strength of the user.
Not
right?
bad. Damage
so
2,
not
damage 2. Yeah, that's not bad.
not bad at all. And
He's
and
dropping Primaris.
And even better than that, he has a skill called Throat Slitter, which you add 1 to his wound rolls for attacks made with Boss Snickrat's melee weapons when targeting enemy units wholly within terrain. So you have to be able to get them in terrain, though, to work that.
That's so themey.
It's so themey.
It is super themey. I mean, you can. The nice thing about him, he also gets like in cover, he gets a 3+ save, but otherwise he's on a 6+ save for an orc. I mean,
But he's a character, so you obviously
Right.
Does he have rules that bonus commandos nearby him?
yes. So he has a couple things. He specifically for Blood Axe commando units, he's kind of a force multiplier for them. He does lack any kind of ranged weaponry. He's just a close combat guy, but he can.
Doesn't even have grenades or anything, huh? Just
No. Oh, he has stick bomb.
He's
a
got
stick
one in his
bomb.
backpack, so they have to give him those.
Right. He also is a terrifying killer, so he subtracts 1 from the leadership characteristic of enemy units while
Always
they're within
good.
6 inches of him.
Always good, yeah.
Not too shabby. And then during deployment, he has infiltrator, so he can infiltrate.
just traditional 9 away.
Right. But with Red Skull Commandos, they reroll hit rolls of 1 in the fight phase for attacks made from friendly Blood Axe Commando units while they're within 6 inches of him. So not too bad.
Not as good as old 6th and 7th edition where he was coming up from your rear. You had Gazgul pushing your front and Snickrock coming up the rear. It was just a bad day.
Right. He is fairly inexpensive. I think he comes in at like 70 points in the point scale, and he's 4 power level in the power level scale. So he's not terribly expensive. He's a boss, but
And he is an HQ choice, right?
he is an HQ choice. So yeah, it's cheap HQ choice to add to but again, he also has like the coolest model ever. So like putting him on the table is also a lot of fun.
Well, and I'll tell you, one of the things the orcs generally struggle with, less so now with the various war buggies and things, but displacement on the table is such a huge part of the game since forever now. It's always been tough for orcs to really contest full table.
Right.
They've got a super powerful forward line, but again, that notion of get into the back line, it was kind of him and Def Cop does. And frankly, he's going to be more reliable than Def Cop does.
I mean, now orcs have the jump.
Right.
So they can jump a mob of boys. But yeah, anything that allows you to move around the board or infiltrate or drop down, it's huge.
Yeah, and it's an area of weakness. So he's also fills that role on an army-wide scheme without sucking up command points to do it.
True.
Sure.
Justin, Vect. Now,
I got
he
the
used
easy
to be
one.
in the Codex. He used to have rules.
He did. And
And you know why he's not in the Codex anymore.
there's no model.
There's no model.
Which, yeah, no, there's no way they could have just, here's all these gorgeous new Dark Eldar vehicles, and we're going to put that old Ravager out here.
Not going to happen.
It's not going to happen. Now, when he got re-released,
That's not to say they couldn't.
it's not to say they couldn't, and I guess this is a good time to talk about what I was hinting at earlier of, I almost kind of don't want to see a Vect model. In my eyes, sure, from maybe like a collector standpoint, if they released a Vect on a throne just to paint and make some cool diorama from, rad.
Yeah.
Right? But I don't envision him. He would never sully himself with physical labor of battle. He would be the guy that's like in Kimura with his lackeys with a video camera reporting back, and he's just like, yeah, just go do this, do this, do this. He's not that type of guy. And plus, he's getting
That's an
really
interesting take.
he's getting really he's old.
He's been around.
He's really old.
Yeah.
And the thing is with Drukari, the older they get, the more souls they need to consume, and even then, like as they just keep dwindling and dwindling, and the Dusk Wraith keeps getting wraithier and wraithier. So I almost envision him at this point as just like this. Even after feeding on 1,000 souls at a banquet, he's just kind of still just getting a little dusty. He's getting a little emperor like.
I wonder.
Yeah, but
Okay.
so
You're the expert, man. I'm not.
long story short, he's been assimilated into a stratagem, which has been quite a controversial stratagem, because it is very powerful. So even though he's not on the field,
Okay.
he's on the field, baby. So if you have to take a Blackheart detachment, and that gives you access to the Agents of Vect, which is a 3 stratagem command point that you can basically stop somebody else's stratagem, which is huge, especially in competitive play when people are making their knights.
But you say in your notes it doesn't get used very often. Is that true? Or did I misread your notes?
See the LOL at the end?
Oh, okay. I missed that part. I missed that.
Sarcasm.
Okay.
Yeah,
Sarcasm doesn't translate.
It's a 3-point strat, and it got FAQ'd to 4 because it's that good, right?
It's that good, yeah.
I mean,
anything that denies somebody from doing something is...
Now, you still have to dice off. If you roll 1, you fail. So then you have to burn another command point to reroll the 1.
Can the command point be used to reroll that?
Yeah. As long as you haven't used your reroll.
Right.
Or no, because it's in the enemy's turn.
But I'm wondering, anyway, okay.
Yeah, so it's very powerful. I mean, especially with all these like green tides.
I miss the LOL at the end.
Yeah. Like, oh, my 30-man blob of orcs is down to 2 orcs. I'm going to burn my command points and bring them back in your back line. No, you're not.
Yeah.
And there's so many stratagems like that are just so key to strategy. So
that is pricey at 4 points.
It is pricey, but I mean, Dark Eldar,
powerful.
They're pretty cheap, you know.
Okay.
I mean,
all right.
Yeah.
Jody,
you've convinced. Actually, I'm sorry. My gears are spinning here on your riff on why there shouldn't be a model, because I was fanboy nerding over here, going like, "There's gotta be a model. You can't what?"
Yeah. And here's the thing. Even
go.
Oh no. Oh, sorry. You go your point, and then I will.
No, I think you convinced me. So convince me more.
I would say if they ever do a model, in my mind, in the back of my mind, I'll be like, that's not Vect. That's a doppelganger. It's a clone. You know, he would just never do that.
Is the Dark Eldar art, the art on the cover showing the Archon, is that supposed to be Vect, or is that just supposed to be a general Archon?
No, that's just a general Archon. They haven't had.
I thought that's actually not the picture I was thinking of. There's another picture. I'm looking at the Drukhari Codex now, but anyway.
Yeah, I've always envisioned like there's a black and white picture of what's clearly like an assassination attempt from Dark Eldar on other Dark Eldar, which is a thing.
Okay.
And there's a noble Dark Eldar sitting in a throne, and all these Dark Eldar just dying around him, and it just looks like a failed assassination.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Which there's a lot. I mean, there's a handful of really great fiction pieces about exactly that going down of people. There's one in my mind of somebody trying to get Vect, and like the witch or whoever it is like, I'm close, and he's just like staring at her like, what are you doing?
Yeah, so that picture, Carl's from the 5th edition book, and you know that could be Vect. I mean, it's never been stated as such.
Gotcha.
But he definitely looks ancient and withered, and
okay.
Yeah, I can't think of another character that, to your point, that's his background controlling and manipulative that isn't also still a frontline fighter.
Right. Like Abaddon is clearly a frontline fighter.
Right. Even Yarick, I mean, who's
Yep.
Older than dirt by human standards. Dude still suits up and throws on the power claw. And why would Vect? He wouldn't. You convinced me. You win.
Okay.
Here's your $5.
yay, space dollars, space bucks.
Space bucks. That's me. So old One Eye.
Yeah.
Is he any good? I don't know. He's expensive, man.
Yeah.
And even in the world of, so still clinging to power level, 10 power level, and he is substantially more
power level,
than the 6, which is a lot for a regular Carnifex. But even points wise, and I did look at the points, it's a big jump. It is not a small jump between him and a regular Carnifex. He gets an extra weapon skill, so he's hitting on 2s, I believe. He's got an extra point of strength over them, an extra wound, an extra attack, an extra leadership. He is an immortal battering ram, which means he does D3 mortal wounds on his charges.
Oh, right.
Beyond what a Carnifex normally does, which I think is 1.
Right.
So that's huge. And when he charges, all Carnifexes have this. When they charge, they are +1 to hit because they are battering rams.
Okay.
Now he also has,
which also, by the way, is very thematic for a Carnifex.
Yeah, it's great. They are supposedly just these running wrecking balls. They are, Triceratops, if you will. One of his traits that I absolutely love is that he is labeled as the alpha leader, and it's this whole like things are drawn to him. Right. Now, in the current rendition, he only affects Carnifexes. this
Right,
effect.
right.
And what it does is it makes them +1 to hit.
Okay.
So they all hit on, basically they're all hitting on 3s, and he himself is now,
On 2s?
I believe so. Now I'm going to have to quadruple check.
That's all right.
The point being though that he just made a wedge of Carnifex running through incredibly reliable
Okay.
in their damage output, and it's nothing to sneeze at when they're trucking around at relatively high strength.
Now, one of the benefits he gets is regen.
Right.
Is that a guaranteed 1
Right.
point per round? So it's not even a roll. It's like,
the beginning of the turn he gets a wound back, and
that's meaty, dude.
9 wounds.
Yeah.
You're going to have to commit to killing him. Now, he does only have a 3-up save.
But
He's a character with 9 wounds and a 3-up save.
So you can hide him.
You can run other Carnifex in the brood in front of him.
That character keyword's
Ooh,
clutch.
buddy.
Yeah.
That's actually pretty meaty.
Kind of
He's-
weird you can hide
again,
him, but you can.
He's just behind a bunch of other Carnifexes.
And it's a battering wall, And I mean, what a wall. They move 7. It's not bad.
Yeah.
It's not bad.
Plus 2d6 for the charge.
There you go. So I was being flippant when I was like, I don't know, because like I'm reading this, I'm like, dude, this seems awesome, but I also know they're not. From what I understand, when I was researching, they also don't seem to be in competitive play hitting the table very much.
No.
So I don't know. At his point difference there, he's a full another unit of something. And
What's his toughness?
7? Tough
Yeah,
7.
I mean-
So which is standard. That's what Carnifex
So
are.
you're wounded on 5s and 6s with a bolter.
Right. Now, okay. And they also have, so this is an interesting little wrinkle to the whole thing. So he has Berserk Rampage. When he rolls a 6 to hit with his claws and talons, he adds an additional attack. Now, remember though, on the charge, he gives himself +1 to hit because of his Alpha Leader.
Right.
And all Carnifexes get Immortal Battering Ram, which gives them +1 to hit on the charge.
Right.
So your 6 or better to hit with claws or talons adds an attack, but he's +2 to hit.
Okay.
So every time he rolls a 4 or better to hit, he's generating more attacks off of his base 5.
Okay.
So dude pumps out some damage and he heals himself. And the big crux, like, I don't know if
the
they
character is huge.
I
It
don't
is
know.
big. That's a big keyword.
Yeah.
He's not Synapse.
Yeah.
And I don't know that he should be.
No, I don't think so. I think, thematically, he certainly shouldn't be.
And I think people would debate that because there is this long-standing narrative of things are drawn to him and like little gaunts like will come
Oh, I
running
see.
to
You
him.
mean he being Synapse himself. You're right.
Yeah.
I
So
see.
he is not a Synapse creature. And it's this weird, but they did give him that Alpha Leader rule to get that, but it only affects Carnifexes.
Okay.
I don't know. It's a cool and interesting character.
interesting
And I
point.
won't lie. The notion of, a half a dozen Carnifexes running
It would be
across
cool
the
if
table
he
at
had
people would
Synapse,
be just fun.
Synapse for Carnifexes specifically.
Yeah.
Right. That
Something
would
like
be
that.
kind of cool.
And I think within his existing points, and it's weird that they did give him a pop to his leadership.
Yeah.
I mean, it's
Yeah.
7 versus 6, but like, what is that? I don't know. He's an interesting character, and I think he'd be fun as all get out to play with.
Yeah.
Is he really all that good? I don't know. I tell you what, I'd be more inclined to run him as a named character than most, though, just because of some of the other reasons I talked about.
Also, thematically, it works for like a list you would be interested in making.
Right.
Yeah.
And it feels more justifiable that a Tyranid named character could be showing up
Right.
that often. That's
Right.
always what stumps me is like, why is every time I play Gaskell's here?
Right.
Like,
right.
it seems that's a whole nother narrative can of worms because Gaskell, that's the narrative right now is he's everywhere.
Right.
But you get what I'm saying.
Yeah. Yeah.
Anyway, so fascinating rules wise, but yeah, I don't know. He's a big old question mark. I'd love to hear back from folks if there are NID players out there that are or are not running him. Why?
I think a narrative play too would be super fun.
It would.
Yeah, a monster hunt list.
So let's move forward.
Yep.
Because we're running a little long on this segment. But so what supplements is the hero represented in for Snickrot? He's in Strachan, the novel by Toby Frost, apparently. So I don't know if that actually details out his battle. I have not read this novel, but now I'm kind of interested in reading it. I'm not interested in Strachan at all, but I am interested in Snickrot, so maybe I'll pick it up just for that. Obviously, he's in the Orc Codex. He was also in, I think it was 7th edition, the Wog Gazgul Codex supplement. There's like a short story with him in there. So that's where he's represented and only where he's represented so far. Justin, how about you?
Good old Asdrubale. Obviously, he's in Dark Eldar 3rd edition, that little spindly 3-page book. He's mentioned in there, as well as 5th edition, where he had rules for fighting on foot for some reason, where he could seize the initiative on a 4+. Those were the days.
Eddie days.
And he had a sweet mace he could brain you with. He's also in Dawn of War Soulstorm, the video game. He's one of the antagonists in that.
That was the only part of that I never played.
Yeah.
Okay.
I've never played it either, but yeah, apparently he's in it. He's also in one of my favorite pieces of little 3-page literature, which it was in an old white dwarf, and I think you might be able to Google it and find it. But it was The Torturer's Tale by Gav Thorpe.
Okay.
And this is a really, really cool story of basically a captured human commander or guardsman or something, and he basically gets brought into this chamber by a crude female homunculi, and is basically told the tale of the Dark Eldar and the Eldar, the fall of the Eldar, and why the Dark Eldar do what they do by Vect. And he shares a glass of wine with
I've read
with
this.
him.
This is super good.
It's such a rich story, and it just really puts yourself into the mind of what it is to be Drukhari. So I think The Torturer's Tale really is what kind of cemented my love of Vect and how much of a really insidious dude he is.
All right.
And he's also in, I think that's pretty much it.
That's it.
Yeah.
Jody.
See Codex Tyranids, and Codex Tyranids. He's been there. And no real Black Library love, and I think it's for all the same reasons we talked about last time we did the Chaos episode, and I talked about Scarbrand. And exactly as you touched on earlier, Carl, how do you write, other than writing as just some force of nature, how do you actually write about a Tyranid? Like, it's such much less a Tyranid that's, got half his brain cooked. Like, it's just, I don't know how you'd write about that, and he's just a wrecking ball.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of good information about his history, but it's always just his history. But yeah, any Codex of Tyranids from 5th edition on, I want to say earlier than that even. My research said 5th ed, but I think you can find it a little earlier, and my gut's telling me. And then, you're not going to see him in Black Library there.
Yeah. I actually already mentioned my Black Library thing. Justin, you have two locations that Vect is mentioned in.
Yeah, he's in Path of the Archon, Chapter 1, and Path of the Renegade. He's mentioned quite a bit throughout the random Path of the Eldar and Dark Eldar books.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, he's like, that's what I mean. Like, he's always a presence, but he's not necessarily there, right? Yeah. That's his will is like everywhere.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
You can't peek too much behind the curtain, or it ruins it.
All right. Let's touch on the favorite story you have for this particular character. Mm-hmm. And for me, I mean, I don't really have a particular favorite story for Snickrot other than kind of what I already described. Like, just as they describe him, and they describe him as this kind of, almost like ghost of an orc. I don't really have a story for him at this point that really leaps out. So
I see what it leaps out. I see.
Yeah. Okay, that was not intentional. Justin,
some characters are like that too, and it's kind of the way my next character we'll get into is that sometimes they don't have to always have these grand scale. He was the leader of this battle and decapitated the head of. Like, sometimes a character is just cool for being cool.
I mean, I guess
okay.
I guess his fight with Strachan is pretty cool. But
that is pretty cool.
But I haven't read Strachan either, so I don't know.
There you go.
Maybe I'll check it out and then I'll report back on that.
Sure. So with Vect, I mean, I think his ultimate story is how he came into power. Because again, he's never really on the battlefield fighting, Marnius Calgar
right
hand to hand. But his story of how he toppled the hierarchy of Camorra was pretty awesome, because this is probably back in, like, I don't know, thousands of years ago, before the present time. But you basically had Camorra ruled over by 3 houses, the Zelian, Kralok, and Yalithian houses.
Okay.
Which that was the prominent power. And at the time, Vect was basically a Dracon of the Black Heart cabal. So he was still he was getting his toes wet. And in this realm of space, the Segmentum Tempestus, it was basically a rather large area where random ships would go missing, random Imperial vessels would go missing. And of course, if they were missing here and there, it was just acceptable losses, right?
Once it became consistent.
And that was Vect's plan. So basically what he did was he said, to heck with this. I'm going to start raiding all the worlds around the area. We're going to ambush every ship that comes into this area to draw the force of the Imperium in and use that as a ploy against his foes, right? So they start attacking everything, just butchering everything within range, and the Black Heart starts growing because souls are power within Kimura. Right. So they start swelling in power, and of course the attention of the Imperium is now going, what's going on over here? So the Salamanders just happened to have a strike cruiser within that area that was scouting out, artifacts of Vulcan and doing their thing. They end up getting hit by Vect's fleets, and they get hit by Haywire and dragged into this portal that was in the area that was kind of covered by holofields and kind of hidden. They get dragged into Kimura.
I remember this. Okay.
Yeah. So they drag this massive ship in, and Vect basically uses his lackeys and he sends them in kind of piecemeal.
Yeah.
To kind of fight with these guys, because his whole plan is to kind of delay the ability for the Marines to reach out and get help to come in. So everybody's like, what is this guy doing? Just go in and finish off this thing and take him
with it. Right.
Be done with it. Take him prisoner, because obviously a Astartes Marine in the gladiatorial arenas, or the amount of pain and suffering that you can get out of,
prize commodities.
Finish it, right? But long story short, he ends up using all these strike cruisers to draw the full force of the Imperium in. And then you have ships from the Howling Griffins and the I think it's the Silver Skulls, or all these Marines show up. And he just ends up like using them as complete like toys, and destroys everything, and ends up basically like crashing these ships into the spires of his enemies, and just annihilating the major houses of Kimura and taking power.
That's pretty awesome.
So he's just got his mind in all these different avenues.
He's a chess master.
Total chess master. And the reading about the battle of these Marines fighting the Dark Eldar in the confines, and just the casualties that are mounting up, and it's super cool. Super cool. Like visually, that would be fun to represent on the tabletop.
Oh, goodness.
A crash Space Marine cruiser would be amazing.
Yeah. Just the front of it, you know?
Right.
And then Marines like disgorging from it. And
Jody, tell us about One Eye here.
Story-wise, again, like I said, he's a little tough story-wise because, it's like Scarbrand. It's just he just does one thing, and it's a good thing, but it's the one thing. But what I did find that I thought was a great story was as he's making his way through destroying Calth and just laying waste, the people of Calth cry out for help, and they're answered by none other than Sergeant Telion of the Ultramarines. Telion, and I love this image because Telion is, at least in his model, is almost the old British game hunter,
right?
With the
I never thought of that way,
but little thing. And so you got Telion, the like, what? Let's get this old beast, and then you've got this just giant smashing creature, this giant, like I said, I think giant, almost like rhinoceros mutant thing. He tracks it down. He keeps shooting at it. He can't pierce its armored flanks because in narratives, Carnifexes have really good armor.
He just couldn't roll a 5.
There it is.
Carl was playing him.
So Telion's scouts team is just getting destroyed by this thing. And then Telion makes a 1 in a mile shot right through the ruined eye socket and yet again blows old One Eye's brains out. Stumbles. Little theme here. Seems we found a narrative thread. Stumbles off the edge of a giant ravine and topples down.
Where did that come from?
Yeah. Telion leads a search for the body, but he was never found.
What? No way. I don't believe it.
Yeah. So it is like the classic, big game hunt of
It's actually kind of cool to think of him that way. I never thought of Telion as like the big game hunter.
Well, in this story, that's exactly what I was like. Oh, that's freaking cool. Okay,
Pat.
Yeah. Yeah. All right, chaps. At dawn, we'll set out for the great beast.
Now I'm gonna smoke my pipe. All right. Well, let's do this. We're going to take a break, and then we're going to come back. We're going to go for round 2 of this segment. So we'll be right back.
Hey, this is Big Nasty B from Life After the Cover Safe, and I'm at a mall talking to strangers about Table War. Table War develops some of the most innovative products for the miniature wargaming and hobby industry.
And I develop pictures.
That's great. They develop things like the Fat Mat.
Who's Matt, and why is he so fat?
Well, first off, Mat is not a person. The Fat Mat is a tabletop gaming surface, and with over 40 different designs, Table War's Fat Mat has become a community standard.
I got a Surface Pro. It's like 10 inches. By the way, I'm meeting my friend Simban. Do you know what that is?
No, but I do want to tell you about the Table War Tower case line.
Oh man, towers are so huge.
Well, it's not that kind of tower. It's the original modular, all-in-one display, storage, and transport system for all your tabletop miniatures.
Wow, you're really smart. What's your relationship status?
Well, it's complicated, but you know what isn't complicated?
Chili dogs.
This is true, but also the Macromat.
Oh geez, not that guy again.
The Macromat is a one-of-a-kind, innovative photography backdrop, perfect for collectibles, hobby miniatures, and small works of art. Its durability, portability, and functionality in one inexpensive product.
I wasn't paying attention to what you just said, but do you validate parking?
No, I do not. But if you want more information, head over to tablewar.com and check them out.
Table War! And we're back to do our second round picks for the Enigmas of the Xenos. And this time we're going to go in reverse order, so Justin still gets to be the man in the middle.
Yeah.
But
You know what I like?
Jody will go first. Jody, who was your second round pick?
Captain Badrook, the Freebooter King.
Ooh, an orc.
Well, I mean, I had to do at least one.
Okay. Justin, who was yours?
I went for Drazhar. I'm going far away from my normal comfort zone, and I'm talking about Arhra, or also known as Drazhar, the Master of Blades.
Okay. All right. And I went with Irlith, the Lost Phoenix Lord of the Shadow Specters. So, I went a little little off the rails there for me.
So, I'm looking forward to seeing your take on that
all
character.
Right, Jody.
All right. So, Captain Badrock is the most infamous freebooter of all time.
What is a freebooter?
What is a freebooter? Freebooter is an orc that doesn't fit the clans. They're the outcast orcs. In simplest terms, they're pirates.
Okay.
They ply the skyways in their various kill cruises, plunder, gather loot, go on their way, find their own fights. There is an inclination of Bad Moons to end up being freebooters because when you're gathering up loot, and you're plundering, that's a money system, and Bad Moons sure do like that. But they're misfits and renegades among the orcs. They just don't quite fit wherever they're from for a variety of reasons that I'll touch on as I go through this. He is the gold standard, pun intended, of all other freebooters aspire to be. He pillages the stars. He in his steel-jawed kill cruiser, the Black Tooth. Not the Black Pearl, the Black Tooth. All right. Originally, Badrock was a Bad Moon boy. He was chased out of his tribe for having way too many teeth for his own good. If you don't know, orcs use teeth as currency, and they grow similar. Not in the rotation, but like sharks, they break off and they just grow a new tooth.
Right.
And for whatever reason, Badrock's teeth grow absurdly fast. So many, in fact, that it looks like he's always grinning because his mouth's overloaded with teeth. And interesting little note, he has since, in his vast ostentatious wealth, capped all of his giant teeth with Urgold plating, which I went, wait a minute, Urgold?
That's AOS territory.
That's AOS territory, and I'd never seen that in his narrative before.
Oh, that's interesting.
That it just in the new codex, he's Urgold plated his teeth from gold plundered from the temple of such and such light, and I went, well, how about that? What do you know?
Interesting.
It was. So lots of little side notes as I talk about Badrock. Get used to that. Badruck is known as an excellent strategist. As such, he's hired out by other orcs to help them navigate battle plans, assuming they can negotiate a price. And this is where he becomes his true orky self, is once the battle's done, then he really negotiates price and either pay him whatever cut of the ill-gotten gains you've got plus his fee, or he just blasts you. And more often than not, he gets what he wants because he's freaking Badruck, and he is the Pirate King. So that was me, and that's Badruck.
Okay, Justin.
So I went with Drazhar, the Master of Blades, the Master Executioner of the Incubi. We don't
Another
talk about
Dark Eldar.
We don't talk about Dark
Excuse me,
Eldar
Drukhari.
nearly enough. Drukhari on the show. So
Yeah, because
I gotta
when
get-
we do a show for them, a Don buys a army he then ends up
and
selling.
many people out there, but I think it's kind of Enigmas of the Xenos, right? Is the show topic.
Yeah, perfect.
And this guy's he's a pretty big enigma, which I'll get more into. But for the time being, he is this massively tall, lithe, slender, crazy executioner of the Incubi Shrine that kind of showed up out of nowhere and said, well, didn't say, he just kind of nodded his head and said, you're going to die. Because he never speaks, he never sleeps, he's never seen eating food. He's just this kind of guy that lives to kill, and he's shrouded in all kinds of mystery, and he's just an all-around BA of the Incubi,
Okay.
or maybe the Striking Scorpions. We'll get more into that.
Okay. So again, I went with Illerith, the Lost Phoenix Lord of the Shadow Specters. He is pretty interesting in terms of where he's featured is in the Doom of Mimiara,
Yeah, that's
which
right.
is the Forge World Imperial Armor book. And what's really interesting is you read that title, Doom of Mimiara, and you think, oh, well, so what's going on with Mimiara in the book? And really what it's about is the Doom of Mimiara was a vision that Irilith has at one point that Mimiara is going to be destroyed if something doesn't happen. It will be the doom of Mimiara. So what ultimately happens here is he's kind of exploring regions of the webway, trying to find the Mimiara craft world to warn them of this thing. He's been gifted with a vision of its doom, but he knew that if he could find Mimiara, he could ultimately prevent the doom of this Eldar craft world. And so while he's kind of cruising around the webway, he ends up getting into this battle with this greater demon of Slanesh, who he kills, but then kind of is exhausted from the battle, and he falls into this long sleep where during this he has a vision that tells him where he can find the craft world. So he goes to Mimiara and he begins training up the Eldar there in the way of the Shadow Specters, like how they fight. As he finishes training them, he actually reveals his true purpose to Mimiara, which he says that basically unless he takes half the warriors of Mimiara, leaves and goes and deals with this threat, Mimiara will be wiped out. So he leaves with fully half of their warriors, which may ultimately even kind of doom Mimiara just because of its complete depletion of so it's kind of this balancing act. So he takes all the warriors, he leaves, and he vanishes. And after many, many years, he kind of falls into legend. They assume everybody's dead and killed. The shrines become like these haunted places that the Eldar just ignore. And it's just another remnant of the fall of the Eldari, right? It's just another abandoned place amongst the craft world. Because again, we talked about craft worlds recently. They're massive, right? They are worlds. They have different environments and that kind of thing. Yep. So then the Farseer Bel Anath of Mimiara foresees the return of Irilith if he could just be found on this planet called Betelgeuse 3, which is known by the Eldar as Belthalame. And so he leads a successful mission to basically recover the Lord of the Shadow Specters, who becomes reborn in the process of this whole thing. And I'll talk a little bit about that in a bit. But and then basically successfully recovers him, actually adding again a new aspect warrior shrine back into Eldar myth. And the interesting thing too that they kind of talk about in this book is that, or they hint at, is that there's other. I mean, the whole story tells you that like there's probably other aspect warrior shrines too that have fallen like this, which offers plenty of opportunity for Games Workshop, or at the time Forge World,
make your own shrine
to make different aspect warriors that they hadn't made before.
Heck yeah!
So anyway, that's what I got going on here.
Very cool.
On.
I haven't read that book in so long. I'm like reminiscing right now.
Yeah, it's.
I'm going to talk. I'll talk a little bit about the book. The book, honestly, here's the thing. Like the storyline in the book is actually not the greatest, and
but there's nuggets.
It was kind of dry, and then basically, it was written by a new writer for Forge World. It really came across very, very dry and not what they were kind of looking for. And then I think at the time Alan was kind of brought in to like punch it up a little bit. And so it was funny when we covered this book. I actually talked to people who produced the book, and I was like, well, I got to tell you, there's parts of this dry. And if you go back and listen to our coverage of it, we say as much. And I said, but I really liked this part. And they're like, yeah, that's the part Alan wrote. It's like, oh, okay, I got it. But overall, yeah, there's nuggets in it, and the overall story's good. It's just how they get there just kind of becomes bland. So anyway, that's me for this hero and who he is. Let's talk a little bit about the models for these guys. Jody,
Badrock, yeah, he's an outstanding model. He's another one, kind of like when you were talking about Snickrod.
You've seen some good art of him too, right? Or is that just a generic freebooter?
Yes, no.
Picture? Do you know the one I'm talking about?
Could be. There's a ton of great freebooter art. I mean, for crying out loud, the freebooter book is probably one, which is an old 80s orc source book.
I didn't even know about it until you just said that.
Yeah. So Freebooters and Orc Army List is like the original orc supplement of their army list. Okay. It followed WoG orcs. And anyway, that image is iconic. And there is a conversion within that book about of Badrock. But I mean, It's literally just a boy with a triple back banner and a tricorder hat. But man, he's another one of those models that if, like Snickrod, if you're going to buy him and paint him, you got to be in for a penny and for a pound.
Yeah.
How piratey is that? So it is a gorgeous model that is just lavished with detail. He's a brick. I mean, and this is the only version of him. Yeah, he's got this just phenomenal jagged sword. He's got his big Ripper gun, Derippa, which is his gun. We'll talk about that a little bit more later. And he is, to me, the model is the perfect blend of comedic orc because he is so ostentatious. He's wearing a giant trench coat. He's got this, he does have a tricorder hat, and gold teeth, and the triple back banner and all that. He is this like overdone silly orc, but at the same time, there is no question this dude would bite your head off and laugh while he was doing it. That like he still has that savagery to him and all those points and angles. It's a gorgeous model.
He's very menacing and piratical, but also like a really good throwback to old second edition orcdom, to those old sculpts. Like perfectly done, updated pirate orc.
Yeah. What does the old silly goofy orc stuff look like when it's in this new orcs are terrifying and monstrous? And he still has those elements, and somehow they balanced it, which I think for a lot of people was a big turnoff to orcs. Was like, oh, they're so silly, and in a lot of times when you do read stories,
I said that earlier. Yeah, right? I mean, there's a fine line it walks sometimes, and sometimes it goes too far for me, and then sometimes it's amazing.
And anytime you read anything about orcs talking to each other, it's hard to not play that and have it sound silly and goofy. And
they're soccer hooligans,
right? Exactly. And Badrock's the hooliganiest of them all.
Right.
But this model, like I said, everything about this model I love. It's funny enough, it was a model that I looked at for years as I want to pick one of these up just to paint it, because I didn't, back in the day, I never would have fielded him. We'll talk more about that in a minute, but just, I liked the model so much because of exactly that. It's this wonderful balance of his, silly over the top, but still looks savage.
Yeah. All right, Justin.
So to touch a little, you guys went a little more in depth on lore than I did with Drazhar. So
feel free to jump back.
Jump back a little. So back to the Enigmas of the Xenos. The thing that really drew me to Drazhar and always has, because to be honest, it's not quite the model. The model at the time, it's really quickly, because we can glance over that and then go back to his lore, which is really what matters. The model now is from like 97. It's one of the only models from that era that still is being produced. So I guess that's testament to it. But I would love to see this model updated. It is what it is, right? The technology has gotten that much better. So the model, kind of cool. He's got a nice different face mask. He's got some cool blades on his forearms. Rad. I want to see it updated.
Yeah.
Sorry. His lore, however, there's a lot of cool nuggets there. So rumor has it is that Drazhar is actually Arhra, the first Phoenix Lord of the Striking Scorpions.
Oh, really? It's fallen. So
The
quote-unquote
first
fallen.
quote unquote fallen, right? So you have two sides of the story.
Brian Harvey would say he ascended.
Yeah. Well, you have the Puritans, right? You have the craft world view of, this guy was one of the first Phoenix Lords, and then he fell to damnation and joined Chaos. And it's like, well, Eldar can't really join Chaos. They're either against Chaos or their just soul is devoured. And as your cat jumps on the table, your cat agrees. So you're either full Chaos or not, right? So the Drukhari side of the story is that Arhra was instantly against what all the other Assyria, all the other Phoenix Lords were about, which was like, we're just going to focus on making the Puritan Eldar we're just going to focus on that. We're going to make us the best Eldar. Who cares about the Drukhari, the hedonists that fell from grace, right? Whereas Arhra was like, no, we're going to need all hands on deck against the war on Chaos.
Okay.
So that was that whole...
That's arguably better argument. I mean, that's a better stance, arguably. So
yeah, and he was a lot more. And again, this is according to the Drukhari lore, is that he was just merciless in that, like, no, we need to look at the big picture. And even his first disciples, he was just like, you have to give me a challenge, or I'm going to kill you. You're done. You don't stand a chance against.
Man, that's a very Cobra Kai attitude.
It totally is. But it goes more in depth into how he had final battles with. This is Arhra speaking, not Drazhar.
Right.
But Arhra had like this final battle with Chaos where he stood alone when all of his other Phoenix Lord brethren just fled, and we're just like, no, we can't handle this. He stood there and basically got like hit with like a beam of chaos, and all of his followers, all of the original incubi, had to like cut him down, his mortal form. But part of Arhra was infused within the incubi. So he's kind of got like this Phoenix Lord like thing going on that really adds that interest to him. Like, what is he really? Is he just really this awesome champion of the Dark Eldar, or is it Arhra? And when Drazhar, now going to Drazhar time, when he did show up in a random incubi shrine, he just popped his head in. Hey,
what's going on, guys?
What's going on? Just nods his head because he never speaks. Nods his head to the hierarch, which is like the head of the incubi shrine. This guy, of course, comes down all pompous and cocky, and he just gets dismembered within minutes, right? Dead, done. And Drazhar has never wanted to claim the role of hierarch or go to that level. He is what he is. He's just like the executioner champion of the incubi.
Right.
But his presence makes all incubi around him inspired and want to do better in his presence. And there's a lot of the lore that really leads you to believe that he is Arhra, and I think that is so awesome.
I like that they don't answer that officially, too.
They don't.
Like, they leave it hanging there.
They definitely don't.
I think that's one of the coolest things about 40K is when things are left unanswered, but just enough is teased. Yeah, that's a really cool background.
Even Ahriman, because it's rumored that there's just bone, like a Phoenix Lord. There's no body within the armor. It's just bone dust. And even Ahriman has been quoted of like, this guy would be cool to have on my side.
Nice.
Interesting.
Yeah,
all right.
He's multi-layered. It's cool.
Yeah.
Very cool. So model wise,
Model wise, it's just really old.
OG original release of Dark Eldar.
Yeah. It's a Fitzpatrick sculpt, so it's just that era of like that was really cool for the time, but just the aesthetic of 40K has
the leap forward that the Dark Eldar took from their old to the new, and I'll tell you, even their new models still hold up tremendously well. I mean, they're still fairly.
Yeah.
Like how long ago was it they came out? 8 years ago now?
Oh yeah, back in that was like 7 or 8.
So maybe
when
10 years ago.
They all got redone. Yeah.
That I remember that line coming out and people just being blown away with how cool they were. So we talked about that.
That was a good day.
Show for us. I'll bet for you that was
the model has really
day.
Cool aspects on him though, and I hope that when it gets redone, that some of those because one in his lore he's known as having almost like artificer armor.
Okay.
So he shows up and everybody's like, well, this is something he's kind of incubi-like, but there's not something that just doesn't gel. And the model, it's still even as old as it is, and I don't know if that got brought into the design philosophy with the new ones, but he doesn't have like a gun hat, but he's got this really cool helmet that has horns going different angles, and he's got the disemboweler blades. I'm sure hopefully he gets redone and we see a modernized version of that look. Yeah. I think it could go places.
Yeah.
Well, let me tell you, Irilith, the Phoenix Lord of the Shadow Specters, is a Forge World model, and the details on this model are insanely good. Yeah. And I think the only thing that with all the Shadow Specters that I really kind of go, the
spire
is that they're standing on a rock kind of spire, to give them that kind of elevated thing. But you could easily remove that.
You could.
And put them on, a piece of brass rod or something
resin,
along those lines.
Super easy to chisel away.
Super easy. But the detail on this model, and I'll tell you, I mean, we have a whole set of them. We have a whole set of Shadow Specters for Shell's Army, and the Phoenix Lord, painted up by Dave Paints, and he did that unit such justice.
They're amazing sculpts. They really are.
They are so beautiful.
All those little banner pennants, though.
Yep. We haven't broken a one of them.
So much fun.
Surprisingly very durable. I would have expected them to have been broken by now. Nope, not at all. And just now, I mean, we'll talk about units and stuff, but boy, I really love the look of these models. And people, especially Eldar players at the time of this count, were very excited because here you have...
hadn't happened in quite a while.
Yeah, I mean, but here's a brand new... aspect that nobody had before or heard
some
about.
Pretty cool lore.
Yeah, really cool lore. So,
and I mean, talk about a Forge World model that could only be a Forge World model. Like, to me, that model embodies that's what Forge World models should be.
Exactly.
I would not. Well, I mean, maybe now I would expect.
Oh, now I would love.
Now
to
I'd be like,
no,
plastic. We could do plastic that well now. But back when those came out, that was light
the
years.
Pinnacle.
And just the detail. The motion, the whole thing, their weapons are so cool looking.
And quite frankly, the whole set is cool looking.
Yeah.
But the Phoenix Lord is just even...
I wish we saw them on the table more. I don't know that I think I've played with them maybe twice because I own the Squad and the Exarch and the Phoenix Lord.
Yeah.
I've never used a Phoenix Lord before, I don't think, but they're fun.
Yeah. So speaking of fun, let's talk... it occurs to me before we go into the rules, Jody, as you pointed out, we're missing a section here, which what is it about this that appeals to you? And Justin, you kind of already tapped into that as you were explaining, and I thought your explanation was fantastic. What is it, Jody, that appeals to you here about this particular Xenos?
So, and I wanted to touch on this just because it was funny. We mentioned in the last segment about this reoccurring, like, oh, this thing fell off a cliff and fell into mystery, and these reoccurring themes. And so if you listen to our chaos coverage, he's a pirate. What's not to like? I spent a little time with Huron Blackheart talking about it's a pirate. That's freaking cool.
I'm seeing a theme here.
Yeah, and what's funny is I didn't realize that until I was like halfway through Badrock, and I'm like, why do I like him? Well, he's a pirate. And I started writing my notes and was like, oh, this sounds familiar. But that aside, other than just being like these guys who just follow their own rules and plunder the skies, and why did we all like Snickrot and that lone gun kind of thing? he's a great example of orc culture with a K. In that thing we touched on with Snickrot, where I was saying like, no, they are wired to do a thing. They are hardwired to do something, and then they being an orc will aggressively follow that path till the end of their existence. Whatever they're hardwired to do, they do it, and they just live it. Orc culture is, this idea of plunder, violence, daca, et cetera. And in a weird way, like a pirate's the perfect fitting almost blend of all of those things. Like a pirate it's all of the cultures at once. It's the speed of the speed freak on the open starways. It's the scrap for a goth. It's the daca of a bad moon. It's the pageantry of a blood axe, because you get to be this pirate look. In a weird way, like the freebooter to me is the apex of orc culture. It's the rare ability of an orc to balance all of their seemingly, obsessive behaviors and find a balance point. And so in a weird way, Badrek to me, as opposed to say like Gazgul, which is the nth degree of being a goth, or a goth, excuse me. That's a funny image.
I just had an image of a goth.
Gazgul. Yeah, I did too. I was like, what's that look like? He's got white face
corpse paint. Yeah.
Anyway, but as a goth, I mean, Gazgul is as much orc goth as you can be, and as goths are the orkiest orcs. But in a weird way, like Badrek's the guy who goes, so what if we blend it all? What if I'm just all of it? And I do all of it. I loot, I pillage, all the things. So that was really appealing to me to go like, no, there is this guy who actually has a balance to him. And as such is this brilliant, is cunning, but brutal, not just brutal. So
for me, I mean, the appeal of Irilith, and I kind of touched on this already, is the fact that it's just a new aspect warrior cast, and you have a brand new Phoenix Lord, and you have the Shadow Specters, you have the Exarch, and then you have the Phoenix Lord. It was all released. When it came out, as I mentioned before, it kind of blew Eldar players' minds that they were like, oh, wow, like this is something we haven't seen before.
Yeah,
it wasn't just a Forge World vehicle or something.
Right.
It wasn't, they had an avatar. We have the Forge World avatar of Cain, which is awesome. Like the Forge World one is amazing. It wasn't a re-envisioning of something Eldar already had or just a vehicle. Here you had not only just like, oh, look, it's a character Farseer. No, this is a whole new range of these guys.
Which in the old lore of Eldar, you'd have little tidbits of teases of, oh no, there's lots of different aspect warrior shrines outside of the main.
Right.
But this was made manifest for the first time ever. Ever.
Well, them and the Shinings on the bikes.
I guess Shining Spears and Warp Spiders since the inception of Aspect Warriors. But so I guess those are the main ones.
But a big gap still. And
I mean, heck, that's back at Shadow Spears were third.
But I would love to see the Eldar as they continue to add more.
Yeah,
recover more of these, or maybe there's a craft world that was lost that has, look, they still have a shrine to whatchamacallit there,
Assyrian was a busy man. Yeah. And it wasn't just like, there's all these different aspects of war, and hopefully maybe we'll see that, but I still would like to see, let's update some of the existing
current ones. Yeah.
And then expand.
Let's move those to plastic, then expand from there, right? I think that would be the ideal plan.
Sure. But it's super cool to see.
But yeah, and the other thing I like about this, as I'll talk about the story in a little bit that I really enjoyed, is, they're called Shadow Specters, and when they're described and how they fight, like they're ghost-like, like they're floating across the battlefield. They're and the story in particular, Irilith is spooky. I mean, they're spooky, which is kind of cool. I don't typically associate that with Eldar, but in this case I do, and I think that's kind of neat. Kind of goes against.
And I like how the color scheme the studio chose too is just white. Yeah. Because traditionally in like Elven and Eldar lore, white is the color of death.
Right.
Not black.
Oh, that's an interesting.
Like it's the opposite.
That's a very interesting observation.
I mean, you think ghost, you kind of think white.
Yeah.
But that has always been the color of death.
Yeah. All right. So then let's go back to kind of what we were going to discuss, which is the rules of these. Now, Jody, go for it.
All right. So again, man, I don't know. Like, would you use him? Like, in the punchline being like, so he's got all his cool themey rules, but would you use him? And I'm going to keep going with, I don't know. So what does he got? He is an orc with ballistic skill 4+, which puts him in very limited company.
Yeah.
Now, freebooters in the newest edition, freebooters flash gits, excuse me. Flash gits are the unit entry that have existed for a while for freebooters. Flash gits are essentially...
Those models are so good.
When they showed that Elites was going to be the new Flash Gits kit, like that was the Elites box.
They're too good.
Orcs. And I was like, oh, no, because I kind of fell away from my orc army and have debated what I'm going to do with it. And that was the one unit that I really kicked myself for not picking up was Flash Gits. And I think that's probably, that may be whispering or wogging pretty hard right now. So for an orc, he also gets a pop to his leadership. So he has a 4-up ballistic skill, which for an orc is like I said, the flash gits are kind of it, and he's a flash git. He also has a leadership of 8, which is pretty respectable as orcs go. He also has his gold tooth armor. So he has, because of his gun, let me talk about his gun first. His gun is called Deripper. Derippa, excuse me, I put an R in the end. Derippa is a super charged up modified Ogren Ripper gun that he's taken, and it still looks basically like an Ogren Ripper gun, but what he's got his mech boys to do is it launches basically mini plasma shells. So it's a plasma gun Ripper gun combo, and that means you can overcharge it. So it's either strength 7 or strength 8, AP -3, 2 or 3 damage. It's heavy 3, which kind of stinks, but if you're an orc, what do you care? I mean, shoot anyway. And the reason he has, so his gun shoots, it almost feels like they built the rules where they want you shooting the overcharged version of his weapon and just risking taking the wounds all the time.
Okay.
And I'll get to why that is. So his armor that I started talking about is what they call his gold tooth armor, is a heavy coat with gold and glitz and flare on the outside, but the inside's lead lined.
Okay.
To try and protect him from his own gun. But it's got a field built into it. So he has a 3+ save and a 5+ invul save, which in the orc book for orc players out there are like, oh yeah, that's a big deal. Orcs and invulnerable saves, unless it's a KFF, you're not getting invul saves. They just don't happen. They're pretty few and far between. So he has a built-in one. He's also known as the flashiest git. He can re-roll his hit rolls of 1 when shooting, and so can flash gits that are within 6 inches. So my thinking is this, that you go ahead and just say heck with it, and you overcharge the gun. You're probably going to hit on 5s anyway, because he's probably moving and it's heavy.
Okay.
Well, if you roll the 1s, re-roll them. Because I mean, if you're an orc and you don't play that way, why are you playing orcs?
But they do kill him.
It's a mortal wound.
Okay.
But I mean, he's got 6 wounds.
You're fine.
Let him roll, let him go. And then your strength 8 -3, damage 3 on his 24-inch heavy 3 gun. And he's got Daka, which means anytime he rolls a 6, he can make another attack, which is still playing with fire.
Still, yeah.
But if you're an orc,
that's what you do.
Who cares?
Yeah.
Let her rip.
You live that dream.
Yeah, let her rip out of the Derippa. So yeah, and then obviously a force multiplier, making flash gits who usually hit on 4s, allow them to re-roll their 1s, and the re-roll 1s to hit. So they're 4-up now. 4-up re-rolling 1s. It's pretty respectable shooting out of an orc unit. That OPS, if you charge them, they're still knobs with 3 attacks each and 3 ups, weapon skill, and all the goodness that comes with being a knob. Plus you got your gnarly guns. It's a unit that I think doesn't. The downside is they're spendy. They've always been spendy, but it's a unit that does something in the orc book that nothing else really does. And then this is a cool modifier for the whole unit. He lands points-wise in a really weird place. He doesn't have the stats of a war boss. He is definitely not a war boss, stat-wise. But he does have better stats than, say, a big mech in mega armor.
Okay.
and you get into just this really interesting, well, if I kit out a war boss or I kit out a or a big mech and mega armor, he lands somewhere in between. And so it's this question of, well, what are you going to do with him? And I think probably why you're not going to see too many bad Rex run around out there is the end of the day, he wants to shoot with his Rippa because he just has a choppa. He doesn't have a special close combat weapon.
Okay.
So he's attacking at his base strength of 5 with an additional attack. So he's got 5
When you're
attacks.
like, I could just get a war boss with a claw.
Yeah. So
It's kind of what it comes down to.
yeah, he falls into this weird, so it's this cool force multiplier. So unless you're going to field a bunch of flash gits and you're wanting to do, which is a thing you can do now, you can field an all flash git army. They've added them back into, that's one of the clan cultures you can take for your
Or at least
whole
a
army.
detachment. You take
Yeah.
him and like a pain boy or something and
Right.
3 units of flash kits.
And then again, you throw a pain boy next to him. And a lot of times when you take pain boys, you can't use various saves to protect him. He's not subject to that. So the pain boy's working with him. Now it's even more reason to maybe risk the mortal wounds. And it's
you have a
just-
sweet pirate band of orcs in your army that you can model a pirate ship battle wagon to transport them all in. That seems kind of cool.
I'm raising my hand because I want one. You know, come on.
Heck yeah.
So I don't know. I don't know that as somebody who doesn't usually field named characters, I'm like, I'm kind of hesitant, but I got to give GW credit. Like as somebody who's, I'll own my grognardiness of never quite getting over back when characters just kind of screwed up the game because they were so much better than everything else. I've never fully gotten over that, but I'm loving the force multiplier.
It takes time.
I quit trying, I think.
Second edition, it took time.
Third edition had that problem. Anyway. But I love the force multiplier thing that this guy makes this unit better.
Right.
And so if you like this unit and you're all about flash gits, then take this guy. Why not? Go for it. So I don't
8th edition, baby. 8th edition.
know. Brave New Worlds.
Yeah.
Justin, what's going on with our boy here?
So Drazhar is interesting. He comes in at 6 power level or 120 points. I haven't checked the FAQ to see if he's been changed. I'm sorry.
Okay.
But he's around 100 points. We'll call it $120. He's interesting. He's definitely a blender. He's a big-time infantry blender in an army that has no problem blending, quite literally with Talos, with chain flails and disintegrators, of blending infantry. So I think where he fails is that all of his attacks are damage 1, and they're only either strength 4 or strength 5 at best. The rend is good. He can murderous assault and attack twice. He has 2 different modes of attack. He can attack with single blades or dual blades. If he attacks with dual blades, he gets 2 extra attacks, which would put him up to, it'd be 8. So he has 4 attacks. He can attack that twice.
Okay.
That'd be 8. And then he can get, I guess that'd be 4 extra attacks with his dual blades. Problem being, they're only strength 4. And I think if you're going to run Drazhar, what you want to do is run at least 1, if not 3 units of Incubi and just go full bore. 2 units of 10 Incubi in Raiders and a unit of 9 Incubi in Raiders with Drazhar squeezed in there, because he does have the Master of Blades rule where he adds 1 to hit rolls for friendly Incubi.
Okay.
Which is pretty awesome because Incubi hitting on 2s with all their attacks, that's pretty good. But again, I just feel like reading the lore behind this character and how he is supposedly, quote unquote, a fallen phoenix.
Mm-hmm.
I just feel, and he moves faster than the eye can see. He's supposedly just this blur of action he's just that halo that moves in and kills everything within sight.
Mm-hmm.
I would have liked to see him be faster than movement 7.
Okay.
Maybe movement 10, because he's moving super fast. I feel like his rules are not nearly as scary as the lore
describes them.
for either Drazhar or Ahra. Let's call him. I'm just gonna call him Arharar. That's what he is. Now, that being said, you can burn 1 stratagem point from the Dark Eldar book or Drukhari book, which is Onslaught. 1 command point makes every single one of those hits of a 6 count as 2 hits.
Okay.
And if he's attacking twice, I mean, like I said, he's going to blend infantry. But Dark Eldar don't really. They don't
it's
need
not like
help
you're
in that.
suffering
They don't
in
need
that
help.
area.
Yeah,
Yeah,
they
okay.
need the.
So he doesn't really fill a role that you would need at this point, is what you're saying.
At this point, he doesn't. Now, what I would like to see, again, would for him to be maybe a little bit faster, or have almost more of like a solitaire like blitz move, where he just goes ham, like it's a 1 per game thing, and he just goes in and like. Or because there's a lot of stories of him challenging and fighting against enemy characters, and I know this is wish listing, but some kind of rules that aid in his combat against enemy characters.
Sure.
Or make him the
Like maybe he does more damage against characters
executioner
or something. Yeah,
champion
Right.
that he is, right?
Sure.
But
And there's a
cheap.
ton of precedent for those kind of rules, so it wouldn't be that hard to drop something in where it's when he's fighting a character, blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
Not at
Absolutely.
all.
Yeah,
But-
absolutely.
And I would like to see his weapons do more damage. Like I would almost rather take the decrease in the sheer amount of attacks he has, maybe increase his base attacks to call it 5 or 6, and make his attacks he does have do more damage.
To make him worthwhile. Because honestly, at this point, I feel like in some ways, we're also nitpicking a codex that is quite good across the board.
A fantastic
Yeah.
book, but
Yeah,
I would
yeah.
love to be like, oh man, I really.
Which one
wanna
do I
find a way.
choose? Right.
Urian or Drazhar?
Right,
Drazhar or Ur.
And right now, it's an obvious choice for you.
Right.
Okay. So Irilith, as I mentioned at the beginning of the show, my Xenos Forge World book is missing. So whichever of my friends I loaned it to,
It's probably in my couch cushions right now.
Oh my God!
I'll find it.
I will kill you. I don't
right
know
now,
how, but I
on
will
the-
find a way.
I don't know how.
Poison his paintbrush tips.
So I do not have, but I do. We do know a little bit
Very
about
good
him. So first off, he has this thing called the Spear of Starlight, which is his weapon, the gun that he's toting around.
The big prism blaster. of
First
doom.
off, he has a mobility of 12, so he's speedy and shooty. The Spear of Starlight is Assault 1, Strength 6, AP -3, Damage 2. But it allows him to make an additional shooting attack for each successful hit he lands, up to a maximum of 4. So, and I believe
That's a Shadow Spectre thing. Yeah.
yeah, I believe he's a 2+, but I'm not positive. On that.
Yeah, he's
But
a
I'm
Phoenix Lord. He's
pretty
gonna be-
certain he's a 2+.
Yeah, 2+, Eternal Warrior. all
So
that, yeah.
you're rolling, unless you roll a 1, he's gonna be hitting, and then he's gonna be hitting again and again.
Can
and
he
again.
combine fire with other specters like specters do?
I think he can. Again, it would be cool if I had my book.
Oh, right.
Whoever has my book,
Right.
I really don't know who has it. Honestly, I think I'm gonna have to rebuy it at this point, which is about the time somebody will show up and say, "Hey, I found it," and then I'm really gonna lose.
Well, who are the Eldar players in our group? It'd be either me, it'd be Lars,
Or Shell.
It could be Shell's got it. Damn it.
Brian.
But to top that off, his Reaper of Souls lets him reroll ones to wound infantry in the shooting phase. So he's pretty shooty, and you would think, okay, well, if this guy's so shooty, maybe he's kind of weak in assault. Yeah, you'd think again. Right, because
that weapon has a big blade on the tip, right?
yeah, and he can basically poke
Yikes.
people with it, which is he's hitting at strength +1, so strength 5 because he's strength 4, AP -3 for 2 damage.
That's good.
By the way, if he charged, it's a D3 +1 damage.
Good Lord.
That's pretty good.
Yeah, that's not too shabby at all. Actually,
all.
and honestly, looking at just the base rules that I can find for him without my book, I'm like, maybe I need to play this guy a little bit. This is pretty cool.
So every opponent ever could be like, what do those guys do?
Yeah. So, I mean, really, you have to think about like Primaris Marines and even Terminators have to think twice before charging.
Yeah,
this
anything
guy.
like the more I get into 8th, the more anything that's like flat 2, especially flat 3, but flat 2 is good, especially because there's a lot of Primaris out there.
As well as this is combined with his 2+ save, and he has a hollow field that subtracts 1 from enemies to hit rolls. So,
Yeah.
And if you cast like Conceal or something on him, he's even that much more difficult.
Yep,
So,
yep.
I mean, and then he has like an aura around him. And again, I don't have the specific rules, but it's like within 18 inches of him, units that are within that bubble have to roll, I think, 2d6 on their morale tests and take the lowest.
Yeah, the Spectres have all kinds of morale debuffs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Again, which represents kind of their spookiness on the field and their ghost-like apparitions and stuff. Honestly, I really just even going through all this, like I fell more in love with them than ever before. So yeah,
that is to bounce back to Badrock real quick. That reminds me of in wish listing. Supposedly he is like the tactical genius of orcs. I would love to see, like, if we're gonna do that, I'd love to see something about that in there of something
Extra command point, extra repositioning.
Yeah, something where his flash kits can outflank or use a stratagem. Oh, I guess I haven't seen that. Somebody can use a stratagem cheaper, but like they've got the
Or they can all teleport.
Right, they
in.
have the teleport of stratagem. Like maybe he can use it a little cheaper, which would certainly the new modern narrative for him. Like his story has progressed just a little small clock tick, but it has progressed, and there's some interesting stuff going on with him. But yeah, I'd love to see a little bit of that. That, you know, supposedly he is pretty tuned in. So
he's on a raiding pirate ship cruiser. So one command point, he and 3 units of those guys can deep strike in and just blow your face off.
Yes, I'll have that.
We'll call it 2 command points.
That would be, it's 3 now, so give him a discount. I don't know, something to show that. But
so looking at the supplements that each of these heroes are represented in, Jody, this is Studio and Forge World supplements.
Yep. So you got, like I said, from very early days, freebooters, the Space Orc Army list. I mean, the fact that they're calling them the Space Orcs. So that's Rogue Trader days up till current Codex, and he's been there the whole time. Yeah.
Right. Justin, how about you?
He's just basically been in Dark Eldar books since the beginning of time. I mean, he was in the
2 of them. Oh, 3.
Yeah, 3.
All 3.
So all 3 books. Same model.
Okay. Well, maybe it's time for an update. I like that look on your face.
He's due.
Yeah, so Irlith is in Doom of Mimiara, both the 5th and 7th edition copies of the Forge World book, which, again, both those are all now outdated, and I don't even think available anymore. They might be available in soft cover, maybe, but once they sell this stuff off, it's gone. And then he's in the Forge World Index Xenos, the missing Forge World Index Xenos. So. Black Library examples of this hero, Justin.
Yeah, I'm the
actually,
champion.
Jody. Jody.
None.
Nope. Justin.
Pretty much Path of the Incubus from Andy Chambers.
Oh, is he talked about in there?
Yeah, he's talked about in there. He's actually, him and Asdrubale are like, they're mentioned a lot in those books.
You know, to be honest, I should go back and like reread that, because when I read it, I wasn't as deep into the lore for the Dark Eldar as I am now, and I think it would resonate a little more with me.
There's a lot of mentioning, really.
Yeah,
and then
which is fine.
And then he's also, Arhra, Drazhar, is mentioned in the Path of the Eldar books. Drazhar. Yeah, so if you're a fan of anything Eldar, do yourself a favor, read the Path.
They are quite good
books. They're all a lot of fun. Yeah, but nothing like just, and then Drazhar was here. He showed up and slayed the entire left-hand side of this Custodes army, and nothing like that.
Irlith is not mentioned in any Black Library novels at this point, so bummer. Anyway, favorite story that involves the character you've chosen. Jody, let's start with you.
All right. So this is, I want to rename this section the Chris Farley section for you.
Yeah, that was cool.
You remember when that one time? That was cool. So you remember we were talking about, and wholly recurring themes, that notion of
falling off a cliff?
A little, well, no. Close. But you were saying with Vect, like maybe there's some Tzeentchian stuff going on there, and like this super mastermind character. So I'm going to just straight conspiracy theory this one.
Okay.
So buckle up, folks, and get your like listening hats on, because we're going to jump through about 4 or 5 orc names, and you got to keep them straight. So let's see if I can put on my teacher hat and explain something that makes almost no sense. All right. So there was this supplement called Sanctus Reach, which was the red wog. Mm-hmm. Okay. Right now in the current narrative, there is a new tagline for Badrock, and it's a very small little piece of his entry that says Badrock saves Magork. Magork was an orc who usurped the red wog, which was the wog that was on Sanctus Reach, from Gruk Facesplitter. Okay. Now, Gruk Facesplitter was the model that was presented in the Sanctus Reach box,
right?
The new war box.
Cool model.
Okay. Gruk Facesplitter gets stomped on by an Imperial Knight during the Sanctus Reach campaign.
Okay. I hate it when that happens.
And somehow they made it cool later. They come back around, but that's another story. All right. So McGork, behind the scenes, had been plotting and scheming the whole time to get Gruck to begin the WOG.
Okay.
Okay, so we got McGork, who's a mech boy behind the scenes, getting Gruck to start a WOG, and Badruck saves McGork's life.
Gesundheit.
Thank you. Nice. All right. At the end of there's a cataclysmic end to the Red WOG. Sorry, spoilers for Sanctus Reach here, but it's been out for years.
Edition.
Deal with it. The big final hoorah is McGork develops the Claw of Gork, which is a giant tractor cannon that's going to pull a meteor into the side of the planet to destroy a temple mountain.
Okay.
Which is pretty orky coolness.
Yep, that's cool.
That works. That works for me. And well, they don't quite do it because a group of scions destroy the tractor cannon. They don't destroy it till it's already started pulling in the meteor.
Right.
The meteor hits the planet and it only wipes out half the mountain.
As you do.
As orcs do. So McGork swoop
I'm picturing this mountain like cut in half.
Yeah.
And like everybody in that half is killed, but everybody else is like standing
on the
like,
precipice.
You can see like all the levels of the fortress in the mountain.
That
And
is-
everybody's like looking out the edge. Oh, what happened?
It's a cutaway diagram
Yeah,
of
right.
like in the old Rogue Trader book
Right,
of
right,
Rune's
right.
World.
Right.
Okay. So what does any of this have to do with Badruck? Because it's all sounding like this has a lot more to do with McGork and Gruck, and because Badruck does not take any part in the Sanctus Reach battles. So
Do you need a cough drop?
nope. McGork was originally marooned on the world that Gruck was on by a group of freebooters. So Gruck, who started the WOG, meets McGork because McGork is marooned by a group of freebooters. Okay, so new orc to be added to the story. Gashdrak the Flash is this particularly irritating flash git who served as Captain Badruck's first mate. Now, Gashrak supplies the guns and weaponry, which allows Gruck to be successful enough to unify a planet and begin his WOG. Now, McGork wouldn't have stood for this, except that the Flashgit, Gashrak, who used to be the first mate to Badruck, is supplying McGork, who was abandoned by freebooters, with all of the gems, diamonds, and materials he needs to make amazing walkers, Morkanauts, Gorkanauts, all this stuff.
Okay.
Okay, so let me bring it all home now. So you got Gashrak the Flashgit, who used to be Badruck's first mate. You got McGork, who is marooned on a planet by Flashgits to meet Gruck, and Gruck who gets the whole thing going. Ultimately, Gruck falls, and then McGork takes over the WOG to bring down use the tractor beam to bring down the stone.
All right.
Did Badruck just plan the whole thing? Did Badruck have the freebooters drop off McGork to set him up with Gruck and then plant Gashrak so that he could manipulate and fund
The
Gruck and McGork for the whole thing?
the only way you could have made this story better was to tell it in iambic pentameter.
Next Patreon episode, I will do.
Oh my
Well done,
God.
sir.
That was pretty good.
Okay.
Is it true? Who the hell knows?
No, because this is all, as I said, this is all me conspiracy theory.
Yeah.
As I kept digging for Badruck's been around since he's got to have cool stories.
Okay.
I literally couldn't find anything. It's all of this pirate nonsense stories, but that's all it is. It's like he shot down an interstellar whale using squig-haired guns.
Right.
And it's
Interstellar.
okay, I don't even know what that means.
Captain
And there's
Ahab
all
it out.
this stuff all the time for Badruck, but none of it's real stories. So then the more I started digging into this weird McGork character that I'd never even heard of because 7th Ed and didn't do that. So then all I can find is every time I find this Sanctus Reach stuff, there's all these little, oh yeah, and Badruck. Oh yeah, and Badruck. And so I start
maybe.
going wait, so how does Badruck even fit into this? And then you start going well, there were freebooters here and they all circle around.
Okay.
So the thing is, Badruck saves McGork from the big cataclysmic end of everything going to pot on Sanctus Reach. Excuse me, I'm getting that's the name of the campaign. The
Whatever
Night
the
World of
planet was,
Ulrich.
yeah.
Ulrich was the world where they hit it with the meteor and all that. McGork is saved by Badruck. Well, since that time, also in line with the Great Rift, Badruck has been using McGork, who learned from all this stuff to produce just top end tech. And he's been using it to the point now where Badruck is like this over this top force. And he's had De Blacktooth, his kill cruiser, geared up to the point with this weaponry that's like nobody's seen it before, where he's like leveling entire hive cities by himself from orbit, which is now moving him. That gives this great list of like he's looting entire Necron tomb worlds and cleaning them out. He's wiping out Chaos Warlords along the Great Rift line.
The only way this guy could get better is if he's like burying treasure on various asteroids.
That's part of his myth.
Yeah, of course it is.
No, that's like for real. That's
no,
part of his
I
myth.
don't. Yeah, as I think about piratey themes, right?
Yeah, he does that.
Yeah.
And that's so the other orcs trail around behind him trying to figure out,
Where
and all the
he's buried
flash
stuff.
kits come running to him. They're like, hey, I want the cool swag, and this is the Pirate King.
That is hilarious, dude.
So
That is
yeah,
funny.
as the master tactician, bringing this entire, possibly the power behind the throne, manipulating the whole thing for the whole Sanctus Reach campaign and the doom of, well, not the doom, but the status of the Nightward Ulrich, all in the means of getting better loot and better guns.
Once again, Jody goes deeper than I think either.
Yeah, I gotta
Justin
follow
or-
that up because I got like nothing to go on this.
Why did I
you know.
choose this order for the second part?
That
Justin.
is hilarious, dude. Well, I'll keep this short and sweet so we can go home before midnight.
Yeah.
So Drazhar is, he's done some cool things in his time. He's killed.
That was
a few
cool when he did
guys.
it.
And,
Remember that one time?
I just want to hear more about this character. I really do. I mean, there's some little tidbits again back to Arhara that are cool of him.
You kind of covered some pretty amazing story, honestly, just in the lore and the background. I mean, like, I thought that was pretty fascinating that he could be this guy,
He basically bests everybody
It's
he
incredible.
fights. He
Well,
really does, dude. Like, I mean, there's stories of him like single-handedly slaughtering all the defenders of a hive spire, and fighting 3 custodian guards and besting them.
So what's his safe?
Yeah, and then but again, you read his rules and you're like, yeah, nope.
Well, I mean, the reality is, right? I mean, some of the lore.
It can't always be
No,
home run
it
material,
can't match.
right?
It can't match. He slaughtered an entire hive city. Hey, let's do a open play mission where you defend a hive city. I'll just play this guy.
Right.
I mean, what is that guy going to look like?
But I guess his big kind of claim to fame is even within like Comorite society is that people, they kind of like, they're like, wow,
Right.
this guy's
Right.
got a reputation.
He's the real
for-
deal.
He is the real
Yeah.
deal. Yeah. And in a city of just horrible individuals.
Do you know? Have they updated with the Rise of the Primarch series, the 3-part
yeah.
Gathering Storm?
Mm.
Did they touch on his thoughts about, or has he interacted with Yanid since?
Mm-mm.
I'm just
Because it's interesting too, because not that I know, but because they are a lot of the incubi shrines are going to
yeah.
the Inari, but I don't know for sure. I'll have to go and
Because when you were telling his background, like that's the story I want to hear. Is because I didn't 7th, I'm now like backpedaling and catching
Right,
up on
right,
like
right.
Yeah.
wait, this
Some of
great
that
rift
lore.
thing and like trying to catch up.
I have a feeling he's mentioned quite heavily, but nothing.
Right. And I like, but when you told his backstory of like this execution, I'm like, and even the way he came into being or ended being, like it's this really interesting, like, well, then how would he interact with this notion of die to be reborn?
Well, apparently, in a way, he's kind of parts of Arhara are all within the incubi shrines, like all infused within them. So
yeah.
it's interesting, and I have a feeling that it'll be delved. I hope it gets delved into more.
Yeah.
Cool to see.
That'd be awesome.
Well, listen, so for Irilith, where it really comes into play is I talked a little bit earlier about the pieces Alan wrote for Doom of My Miara. And there's about a 6 to 8 page section of Doom of My Miara that tells kind of the story of Irilith's rebirth. And it's told from the perspective of this Inquisitor Lord that is kind of trying to, Inquisitor Lord Dansk, who's trying to put a stop to whatever the Eldar are doing on the planet, as well as recover whatever artifacts are hidden in this kind of underground location, which is actually where Irilith is basically in hibernation. And like it has to do all with, he's got like Mechanicus forces with him and that kind of thing. And they're making their way down through this huge Mechanicus facility. And then before he can really prevent it from occurring, the Farseer, whose job was to come, find Irilith, awakens him. The Shadow Specters are like flying through, destroying everything. They combine their fires. You mentioned earlier in the rules. In the rules for the Shadow Specters, they had this rule where they could combine fire against one particular target, and it would like increase the power immensely of the shot. And they basically fire this down into like the heart of the facility, like destroying the facility and then escaping it. But the Inquisitor Lord is like killed in the process of all this, as well as all the Mechanicus and stuff. And the story is actually extracted. Like I'll read the last part of this. The testimony of Inquisitor Lord Hestephus Imperator Dansk, extracted post-mortem via augmetic visual implants, estimated 78% accuracy due to injuries sustained. The subject, meaning the Inquisitor Lord, has been judged guilty of 172 crimes against the Emperor and his blessed citizens, including failure to retain Xenos artifacts for further examination. And then it references a file, and it says, the mortal remains of the heretic have been sentenced to 2,533 consecutive years of service in the archival Crimea Servitor Corps. Restricted to level B3 enhancement only. May the Emperor have mercy on his soul. So because this Inquisitor Lord fails to stop this guy, they charge him with all these crimes and then basically make him a servitor.
How's that for grim
after he's been killed? Like, that's totally messed up.
Cold-blooded.
But, the resurrection of Irilith is just fantastically told. And then again, this is really the rebirth and reintroduction of a whole new aspect warrior cast into the system. And it's just, it's fantastic. I'm really saddened that they're not doing Imperial Armor books anymore. And that these aren't really getting, updated, because some of the best stories in 40K came out of Imperial Armor. I mean, they're gritty, they're dark in tone, they're really well told. Even when they're not the best, they're good. And when they're good, they're good. Yeah, and when they're really good, they're fantastic. So I'm kind of disappointed that's the direction they're not going any longer. So
and while they were their own thing, I got to say that the Vigilus supplement, it's a more mainstream product, but it's got that vibe to it.
They're trying, they're trying to go that direction. It's, I don't know. There's something about the tone and feel of the Imperial Armor stories that is different than the mainstream studio was presenting. And I don't know how to explain that difference. Like, it's a feel. There's like a feel to it that's very, very different. I guess one of the things I like, you know what? I know what a big part of it is. What a big part of it is with the Imperial Armor books, you get the impression that this is a battle that they're describing, or a war, or whatever they're describing, that is amongst thousands of other wars and battles that are going on. In the main studio pieces of 40K lore, it always revolves around characters that we all know and, have an interest in, whether it's Vect, or whether it's Gilliman, or Abaddon, whoever. It's always, and I think that's one of the drawbacks to the setting in general when they start talking about these heroes, is that, like, these guys are bigger than life, sure, but the galaxy is freaking
it's a
huge.
big playground.
Yeah. And when Forge World approaches it, they approached it in such a way that you were like, oh yeah, the Orpheus sector is falling to Necrons and billions of people are being wiped out. Never heard of the Orpheus sector? Yeah, why would you? Like, there's thousands of these sectors, right? And so even when, like, big heroes get involved, like, they're tertiary involvement. I mean, even like when you have Kuln of the Red Scorpions involved, you're like, well, who's this guy? Right. He's no Marnius Calgar.
Right.
Well, isn't he?
Right.
Because he's a chapter master. And by the way, there's lots of chapter masters, right? and I get that sense of scale from Forge World. I think
that's a great way to put it. Yeah, and I always felt like it was the nature of almost being like military briefings, and I think that's what you're saying is a better way of describing what I meant by like military briefings. It's that here's this action that took place, and it's one of many. But here was this action, and it was important, and the details were important.
There could be a billion books like this.
Yeah. And there's something about that kind of like, let's shine that flashlight over in that dark corner and see what's going on.
Where I feel like the studio, when they focus on stuff, it's like this overarching story and everybody wants it to advance. Well, what happens to Dante? Well, the galaxy doesn't care what happens to Dante.
Right. And they have to,
because the galaxy is cold.
Right. But they have to do that. I mean, you've got these IPs that are your flag carriers. But yeah, I think that,
but I'd love for them to release stuff that didn't involve any of these characters. Or
I agree.
Maybe we just make a bunch of new characters, then kill those characters. We can make them out of generic. You can build a chapter master in the codex. So build a chapter master and kill him. Here you have this Inquisitor Lord that, and then we just build him up just to wipe him out. It's like, oh, that's interesting.
And it just gives you more narrative battles you can play that are.
Yeah. I don't know. It's a tough balancing act. But I did like the way Forge World used this. Anyway, enough about that. I think we've reached the end of this segment. So let's take a break, and then we'll come back and close out the show.
Hey, guys. I'm Caleb.
And this is Kat.
And we are CK Studios. We want to invite you and your friends to come paint with us at one of our exciting and fun-filled airbrush and hobby weekenders. Our weekend workshops are 2 days of intense hands-on training, working directly with and learning from some of the top gaming artists in the industry.
Whether you're brand new to miniature painting or an experienced veteran that wants to up your game, CK Studios has the workshop for you. Our workshops cover everything from learning the basics and building confidence in airbrushing, all the way up to creating that centerpiece model for your army or display case.
For more class info and our upcoming schedule, you can find us on Facebook at CK Studios Come Paint With Us, or register directly at ckstudios.bigcartel.com.
If you can't find a class near you, that's okay. Just contact us and we'll bring a workshop to you.
All right, and so we're closing out the show. Actually, the next day, you can probably hear a lot of noise in the background. That's because we're here for Don's see you later party. So I screwed up the last file, so I think we're good now. I think anything you guys want to add to the context of the Xenos discussion, or are we all good there?
I think we're pretty good.
I think we covered it.
Okay. All right. Anything you want to add about your CK class, Justin?
Yeah, so my next couple, unfortunately, are sold out. But if you find yourself in Vancouver, Canada, there are some openings still. So come and paint with us if you so fancy it.
I did also want to touch on, we did our first loop through on Imperium, Chaos, and Xenos. If there's somebody we left out that we just totally overlooked or missed, or somebody you're thinking would be just like, hey, how could you guys, this guy's like the paragon of that faction, give us a call. Let us know in the comments section for this episode on Facebook or wherever you can get a hold of us. We'd love to hear that feedback and chat a little bit about that. And maybe we agree and maybe we don't, but we're gonna revisit this topic, so it'd be great to have a chance to chat about these guys again in the future.
Yeah, and see if anybody wants to add anything to these characters that we've talked about.
Yeah,
absolutely.
For sure. You can do all that in the Facebook group and more. As you know, we have a Facebook group under the Independent Characters. We also have the Patreon, which I discussed earlier. It is honestly, I'm absolutely flattered by the people who have contributed to the Patreon so far. And things are just going swimmingly with that. If you want to take part in the global campaign that's going to be running,
which you should,
it's going to be amazing. You might want to check that out. If you want to participate in our Discord channel, which I've often referred to as the champagne room of the club that is the Independent Characters group, you'll want to do that as well. If you like what you've heard, please leave us a review on iTunes. If you don't like what you heard, reach out to us. You can reach out to me via email, carl@theindependentcharacters.com. There's no A in independent. Or you can reach out to me on Facebook or what have you. So I'm available kind of everywhere. Okay, so I think that's it, right?
Yep,
Let's just go ahead and wrap it up. You have a game to play. You have a hoodie game to play.
I'm actually playing Austin.
Yeah.
It's happening.
All right, so who are you going to play next for the hoodie?
Cold-blooded.
I hope he's aggressive with Reboot. like Rabute. He's got to be aggressive with him.
He has to be.
Yeah.
And unfortunately for Austin, he's never played against Dark Eldar.
Oh, yeah. So it's going to be an eye-opening experience. More on that next episode. We've actually had a great day. Adon has already taken off. He's got to catch a flight.
Literally.
But I think we've had a lot of fun today. We have a lot of folks here playing. You were playing not Blood Bowl, but
Blitz Bowl.
Blitz Bowl.
Yep, and we even got Matt in the mix too. So not only did he get his first game, but now he's visited the
Addicted.
Astronomicon. Yep, we got him.
I like Matt.
Yeah.
He's a cool dude. He's a cool dude.
Yeah.
I mean, don't tell him,
I
but
know.
he can
listens.
come back.
Okay,
He can come back.
as long
I'll
as you
beep
said
out
it.
his name.
Okay.
Did he wear the Hawaiian shirt just for Carl?
No, he dresses like that all the time.
That's amazing. I love it. I love it.
At a funeral with the flowery shirt.
All right. So taking all that into account, this is Carl,
This is Justin.
This is Jody.
and we're coming to you from the Astronomicon, where you can combine your firepower for greater effect.
Death is my meat and terror my wine.
And I can spend 3 hours talking about old One Eye and my flashy knob, and nobody even giggles.
Until now.
I'm not alone.
This episode of The Independent Characters is protected by the Creative Commons license. If you have further questions as to its use, you can find information on the front page at theindependentcharacters.com.